What if one dream could change everything? Imagine being the laziest noble alive, doing nothing but sleeping your life away, until you witness 37 years of relentless training in a single night. This is the story of a boy who inherits the will of a man who never stopped swinging his sword, not even at death. A hooded stranger in a tattered cloak arrives in a peaceful village. The local farmer immediately suspects the newcomer, whose shadowed eyes hint at violence. Despite the farmer's hostility, the village elder welcomes the wanderer and gives him shelter. The farmer watches, sensing their peace is about to be disrupted. 4 days pass, and the stranger becomes a ghost, secluding himself without making a sound. While the farmer pretends not to care, the village gossips endlessly. Neighbors whisper and children peer through cracks, desperate for a glimpse. 10 days in, village boys scatter chickens, shouting that the man swings a sword every day. The farmer continues his work, telling himself the stranger's backstory is none of his concern. Another month passes. The wooden gate rots, yet the rhythm from within never changes. Rumors spread. People claim the stranger is preparing for revenge or hiding as a disgraced knight. To the farmer, it's just noise. Curiosity eventually wins. The farmer wonders how strong the stranger must be after training for half a year. The disappointment hits hard when he peers over the wall. The stranger lifts a heavy dull blade and brings it down, up and down. A simple vertical chop. The form is mediocre with no flair. Just a man lifting iron and letting gravity do the work. The farmer walks away and stops caring. Life moves forward. A retired mercenary arrives with his daughter Rema. The farmer becomes enamored and courts her. Meanwhile, the stranger continues his ritual. 3 years pass. The farmer notes the man swung his sword again today. After 2 years of courtship, Rema becomes his wife. They lie together in their home, happiness filling the quiet. Yet a strange thought intrudes. 5 years have passed. People have laughed, cried, lived, and died. Yet the stranger remains in the distance, raising and lowering his sword endlessly. The years blur. The stranger stands shirtless in summer heat. Winter arrives with snow, but the stranger is still there. The farmer's life blooms. He and Rema welcome their daughter Laura. 7 years pass. 10 years. 15 years. Even during rainstorms, the lone figure stands unmoving but for the rise and fall of his arms. In the present, the farmer is now an elder. He sits at his desk, rubbing tired eyes. He hasn't checked on the neighbor lately, but he doesn't need to. He knows the man is out there. The training has become a fundamental law of their existence. The old man's eyes flutter open to his grandson's beaming face. Laura tells her son to stop bothering Grandpa. She's taking the kids to the market. He waves off the invitation, feeling too tired. After his family leaves, he decides a walk might clear his mind. As he strolls through the hamlet, villagers greet him respectfully. He walks down the path, thinking about how 37 years have passed. The village has changed, but he stops at a ruined wooden gate overgrown with vines. Except just this place. Suddenly, a noise snaps him to attention. Someone is running. He sees a figure dashing relentlessly, gripping a heavy sword, muscles straining. The vision shifts. The runner is now kneeling, body glistening with sweat, chest heaving. Yet his hands remain locked around the blade's hilt. His eyes are raging. He hasn't let go even until the end. The old man stands frozen. The intensity burns into his soul. The silver halo around the warrior's body fades. The old man approaches and lays the stranger down gently, closing his eyes. He whispers, hoping the fallen swordsman has passed on to a better place. A young boy bolts upright in bed, chest heaving, cold sweat drenching his clothes. His blue eyes are wide with terror as he clutches the blanket. The remnants of emotions fade. He murmurs, wondering what that dream was. Far from that village, morning sun rises over the Pereira estate in the Hale Kingdom. Guards discuss the children of Baron Pereira. One guard talks about young Lady Kirill, who at 11 received the title of enchantress from the royal family. He explains how rare enchanters are. The mood shifts when another guard scoffs, asking what difference it makes since the eldest is the young lord anyway. The mention kills the conversation. While daughter Kirill is famous for talent, eldest son Iren Pereira is different. One guard brings up the boy's nickname, the deadbeat noble. The title is earned from tragedy. The boy lost his mother young and retreated from the world. Since then, Aaron has done nothing but stay in his room sleeping. The guards feel brief sympathy, but disdain his laziness. Their gossip stops when two figures approach. It's the second wife, Amelia, and prodigy daughter, Kirill. Kirill scolds them for being obnoxious during their shift. The guards snap to attention, bowing low and shouting apologies. Kirill questions the worth of an apology. As they stammer, Amelia intervenes with a serene smile. She suggests they've learned their lesson. The noblewomen walk away, leaving the guards to collapse against the walls. Inside the mansion, Aaron Pereira jolts upright in his bed. His breathing is ragged, eyes wide. It's the middle of the day when he usually sleeps, yet he's awake. He clutches his head, distressed. He tries to force himself back down, but his mind races to the strange dream haunting him. Since that dream, his reality has shifted. He recalls phantom sensations more real than anything. The taste of water after exhaustion. The screaming of muscles pushed to breaking. He stares at his soft hands, confused by the disconnect between his body and the memory of training. A maddening itch crawls beneath his skin, a desperate need to move. The door creaks open. A servant peers in, asking if the young master needs anything. Aaron stands by the bed, sweat dripping from his face. He looks at the servant, eyes intense and desperate. He stammers, struggling to voice the alien desire consuming him. Finally, he forces it out. He wants a sword, and he wants to swing it. The servant's expression shatters, replaced by absolute shock at the impossible command from the boy who does nothing but sleep. The Pereira family training grounds fell silent as an impossible sight unfolded. Aaron Pereira, the young master infamous for never leaving his bed, stepped onto the field. Soldiers and guards exchanged shocked glances, one even asking his companion to pinch him to confirm this wasn't a dream. The sharp sting that followed proved the reality nobody expected. Aaron moved with heavy steps across the courtyard, his blonde hair catching the morning light while exhaustion marked his pale face. His attendant trailed behind, frantically explaining that the wooden practice weapons varied wildly in weight and balance. The man begged Aaron to wait for a proper instructor, but the young master refused without hesitation. Standing before the weapon rack, Aaron's gaze locked onto the heaviest wooden sword. The thick blade resembled a club more than any refined weapon. He reached out and gripped the hilt. Immediately, his arms trembled under the burden. Muscles accustomed only to silk sheets screamed in protest as sweat formed on his brow. Two noble officers observed the pathetic display. They acknowledged a hint of potential in his stance, but agreed. The boy looked utterly worthless. Their conversation turned to the humiliation Aaron suffered last month at the hands of Lord Gyron's son. That public shame apparently drove him from his chambers. They laughed while placing bets on how long his motivation would last, settling on 30 minutes at most. The attendant continued pleading, insisting swordsmanship couldn't be learned alone, and suggesting they start fresh tomorrow. Aaron ignored every word. He heard the mocking laughter from above, felt every dismissive glance from the sidelines. Instead of crumbling, his eyes hardened with desperate focus as he prepared to swing. Each movement brought waves of agony through his untrained body. His foot slipped on the smooth stone, and balance vanished. He crashed backward onto the ground, chest heaving as mist escaped his mouth with each ragged breath. Despite the pain, strange relief settled into his exhausted limbs. He forced himself upright, dragging the heavy blade across the floor into position. A singular purpose drove him forward, replicating the movements from his recurring dream. With every forceful swing, the weight crushing his heart lifted slightly. Bad memories and festering grudges were sliced away by each arc of the blade, scattering into the wind. He became lost in pure intensity, eyes fixed and unblinking, consumed by rhythm and motion. Only a firm hand on his shoulder broke the trance. His attendant stood pale-faced, shouting for him to stop. The sun already touched the horizon, casting orange shadows across the grounds. Aaron blinked through mental fog, asking what time it was. As adrenaline drained from his system, strength evaporated. His legs turned to lead, and he collapsed into the attendant's arms, murmuring that he couldn't feel his throat anymore. The attendant scolded him for pushing beyond all reasonable limits, explaining he'd been calling out for ages without response. While helping Aaron back toward the mansion, the man insisted he leave cleanup to others and focus entirely on rest. Aaron managed only a weak nod, wondering if standing would even be possible tomorrow. Night fell over the estate, every fiber of Aaron's being pulsed with shooting pains, soreness so intense he feared sleep impossible. Yet exhaustion, within 5 minutes, he fell into deep slumber marked by rhythmic snoring. Days later, morning sun illuminated the dining hall where Aaron devoured food with savage hunger. He stuffed sandwiches into his mouth and gulped milk, his appetite matching his physical demands. The attendant asked if he planned to return to the training grounds again. Aaron confirmed immediately. The dream returned nightly, and his body craved movement only the sword could satisfy. It cleared his wandering thoughts and provided tangible progress. Slamming down his empty glass, he demanded more food. Near the estate gatehouse, guards discussed their ongoing wager. One confirmed it was the 4th day, eager to see the results. His companion remained cynical until a hooded figure approached. The brown-robed stranger leaned on a wooden staff, his face obscured as he politely requested directions to the training grounds. The guards demanded identification. The elder searches his memories but struggles to find a parallel to such tenacity. A jarring thought arrests him. The boy possesses an iron will typically forged only through old age, yet impossibly exists within a 15-year-old. If this raw potential were guided by the right mentor, the results would be legendary. The question hangs heavy. Just how high will this boy ascend? Ancient texts describe the griffin as a legendary creature with a lion's body and eagle's head, possessing impenetrable steel-like skin. Yet reality bends under Enchantress Kirill Pereira's will. Energy crackles and condenses, weaving together a massive crimson-feathered beast that slams onto stone pavement. The impact knocks armored guards off balance. The griffin's glowing teal eyes fix on terrified soldiers. This is a construct imbued with energy mimicking life itself. Kirill stands before her creation, finger extended in accusation. She singles out guards one by one, voice sharp with authority. Her eyes flick to a hooded elderly stranger watching with an amused smile. The old man claims to be a wandering knight observing the grounds. Kirill ignores him and turns fury to 3 guards, demanding why they're standing idle. The griffin lowers its head, beak inches from trembling soldiers. They stammer desperate excuses about shift changes. Kirill cuts them off, furious they dare interrupt her. The griffin snaps its beak, silencing protests. She berates them for gossiping instead of maintaining discipline. A voice cuts through the tension. Aaron appears, wooden sword in hand, sweat dripping from his chin. He looks exhausted, breath ragged, asking what's happening. Kirill's expression shifts to annoyance and concern. She snaps at him to quit immediately. Aaron blinks, confused. Kirill roughly grabs his wooden blade, demanding to know what he thinks he's doing. She lectures him harshly about swordsmanship, bringing up his history of sleeping all day. She points out his terrible form. comparing him to rookie guards. The Griffin looms over the scene. Kirill accuses him of acting out because of rumors from 2 weeks ago. Before Aaron can respond, a calm, commanding voice interrupts. A dark-haired woman descends the stairs, instructing Kirill to stop bothering her brother. Kirill tries to protest, but the stern command allows no argument. The woman dismisses guards with praise, then warns Aaron not to overdo training. As they leave, guards sigh in relief before the Griffin lunges, sending them scrambling. The hooded old man remains, stroking his beard. He watches Aaron standing alone. Despite the chaos, the boy's focus never faltered. He wonders if he should observe the young noble longer, sensing hidden potential. Later that night, a servant walks through dim corridors when Kirill blocks his path. The confrontation escalates. The servant suggests she return later, attempting to step around her. The air grows heavy with unseen force. Kirill's demeanor shifts to menace, questioning if he's talking back. Crushing pressure slams into him. Energy radiates from her small frame with such intensity his eyes widen in terror. His knees buckle and he collapses, sweat beading on his forehead. Kirill warns not to tell anyone. Time passes to a sun-drenched bedroom where a small, red-furred spirit resembling a cat in a top hat plays a silent melody. Visible notes of light soothe the sleeping blonde boy. As his eyes flutter open, the spirit places a letter and retreats. He reads the message. It's an apology from Kirill for harsh words, explaining she was worried. She left a doll to help with rest and asks him to keep her visit secret from their mother. He flips the paper, finding another message from his mother saying, if Kirill is annoying, just tell her. Despite laying around for 10 years, Kirill and his mother still care deeply. A knock announces the meal. His expression hardens with resolve. The hallway fills with purposeful footsteps. The older servant watches in disbelief as the young master strides past with energy absent for a decade. He announces he'll eat with his family. In the dining hall, tension turns bewildered. The boy piles meat onto Kirill's plate while she looks overwhelmed. He stops, expression softening. He thanks his father, mother, and Kirill, admitting he always wanted to express appreciation for taking care of him while he did nothing. He apologizes and confesses he loves them. His mother smiles warmly, eyes glistening. His bearded father looks at him with immense pride, returning the sentiment. His father mentions hearing about his swordsmanship focus, advising not to overwork himself. The boy assures him it's fine, internally noting that compared to training in his dreams, this is nothing. Weeks later, 2 guards stand on battlements overlooking the courtyard. They marvel that the young master has trained without missing a day for 15 straight days. Below, the boy swings a massive greatsword, clothes soaked with sweat, breath ragged, but grip iron tight. 2 men discuss a solitary figure seated on a mat near wooden barrels. They question who the elder is, noting his frequent presence. The elder, wrapped in a russet cloak, sits with a grass blade between his lips, expression unreadable. In truth, the old man's focus is sharp. 10 days have passed since he began observing. Initially, he believed the boy's dedication was born of fleeting pride, expecting him to abandon the sword before the week ended. But he admits he was completely wrong. The boy known as the deadbeat noble leans against a stone pillar, gasping for breath. His chest heaves and sweat drips, yet there's no complaint in his eyes. The elder finds it baffling that someone who never exercised can endure such punishment without showing distaste. The boy's rhythm isn't that of a child playing at war, but possesses the monotonous, heavy consistency of a blacksmith hammering steel, as if he's lived with that singular, unyielding mindset for decades. Searching through vast memories, the elder struggles to find precedent for such willpower. His eyes narrow as realization takes hold. He knows that no matter how talented a hero may be, there's one quality that typically only manifests after a lifetime: an iron will. Yet inexplicably, he sees that exact tempered resilience radiating from this 15-year-old boy. The young noble stands amidst swirling dust, silent aura of determination glowing around him. The elder's mind races with implications. If this boy continues paving his road through the way of the sword, and if that raw, impossible potential can be properly extracted by the right mentor, the limits of his future dissolve. He's left with a single lingering question: just how high will he be able to go? The wooden greatsword cleaves the air, kicking up dust. Aaron swings with exhausted determination, body drenched in sweat. An old man in a brown robe watches with sharp eyes. A burly worker asks if the boy has received formal training, noting his impressive movements despite fatigue. He speculates the upcoming instructor might be Knight Orn Juker. Before the name fully leaves his lips, the old man's face contorts with fury. He roars a denial so loud it shocks the worker. The elder refuses to let a hidden gem like Aaron be polished by a rascal who only knows how to scream at soldiers. He rises and strides toward the main estate, determined to intervene. Inside the Lord's office, the elder stands before Aaron's father, having shed his guise. The Lord listens stunned, asking if the assessment is accurate. The elder confirms without hesitation. The Lord's expression softens into disbelief and pride, but concern crosses his face as he looks down at the document. A recommendation letter for the Chrono Swordsmanship School. The parchment bears the insignia of the continent's most prestigious institution, legendary for its rigor. Merely being a trainee there grants the respect of a nobleman. But along with prestige comes brutal competition. The Lord worries if Aaron can survive. Later, the Lord presents the opportunity. He slides the recommendation across the desk, but speaks with caution, assuring his son he won't force him to go. Aaron asks for time to think. The Lord agrees. In his bedroom, Aaron sits staring at the floor. Doubt gnaws at him. He wonders if he can succeed after 10 years doing nothing. Fear is palpable, but frustration overrides it. His hand tightens into a fist. He can no longer bear the stagnation. He returns to his father's office and declares his acceptance. The day of departure arrives. The family gathers to see him off. His mother and sibling wave. His father looks on with pride. Eren climbs into the carriage, door clicking shut. As they roll past the estate walls, the driver asks if this is his first time leaving alone. Eren confirms it is. The servant offers a small bundle. Inside rests a weathered pendant from Kirill. Eren clutches it against his chest as warmth spreads through him. They stand before the academy walls. The servant offers to escort him, but Eren stops him, explaining he's only a trainee now and needs to do things on his own. The servant is overcome with emotion. Eren promises to return and takes his first steps toward the gate. Up ahead, a blue-haired boy flanked by guards is being announced with fanfare. A herald announces young noble Bart Lloyd from Count Lloyd's family, recommended by Sir Colesway. The gatekeepers bow respectfully. Eren steps up to the checkpoint, introducing himself and extending a scroll with a recommendation from Sir Somerville. The guard's eyes widen, exclaiming he knows Sir Bran Somerville. In his mind, the legendary knight appears, a warrior cutting down wolves and monsters. He assures Eren he'll pass and gestures toward the auditorium. Once Eren leaves, the guards shift from respect to confusion. One mutters about Somerville actually giving a recommendation. The older guard notes the kid is the deadbeat noble. His colleague explains it's the lazy kid from the Pereira family, wondering what the picky old man saw in him. The older guard states they'll find out soon. Eren pushes open the auditorium doors, revealing a hall packed with people. As he steps in, silence ripples through the crowd. Hundreds of eyes fixate on him. A redhead girl whispers to stay calm. A silver-haired girl stands silently with stoic expression. Eren wipes sweat from his cheek as he navigates the sea of trainees. A booming voice echoes. A large man in heavy armor with a jagged scar stands on the podium. He welcomes 400 preliminary trainees, introducing himself as their instructor. The trainees murmur nervously. The scarred man scans the room. His gaze lingers on the blue-haired noble and redhead before focusing on the silver-haired girl. She stands with perfect posture, radiating a cold aura. He recognizes Ilia Lindsay, the second genius from the Lindsay family. Bart Lloyd stares at the silver-haired girl in despair, realizing his chance of getting first place has disappeared. The instructor slams a fist against his palm. He explains they're not yet trainees but preliminary trainees. The training process is difficult. If they pass the next 2 assessment tests, they can stay for a year. More hell awaits after becoming full trainees. He instructs them to leave their belongings and go outside. The instructor leads them toward a sprawling field, dominated by a massive circular track. He explains it's for physical training focusing on endurance. Without hesitation, he launches forward, shouting for everyone to run. The sudden start catches students off guard. They scramble to follow. The instructor leads effortlessly while students struggle. He taunts them and accelerates. Chaos ensues as breathing becomes ragged. Toward the rear, the blue-haired student maintains calculated rhythm. He tells himself it's a marathon. His gaze drifts to a blonde boy struggling behind everyone. His expression hardens with disdain. The blonde boy's legs give out. He collapses onto dirt, gasping for air. The blue-haired student keeps running, leaving him behind, thinking the nickname fits perfectly. On the ground, the blonde boy is in agony. His vision swims and chest feels tight. He thinks his heart is going to burst. The gap between him and the rest widens. He can't take another step. But then, a memory flares. His boot slams into the dirt with renewed force. The blue-haired student turns, eyes widening. The blonde boy commands his broken body to obey. He forces himself to his feet, swaying but standing. This is nothing. At the front, the instructor grins sharply, recognizing that fighting spirit. The blonde boy's mind flashes to the figure haunting his sleep, a warrior with a scarred back standing alone, radiating absolute power with nothing but a simple sword. That image is etched into his soul. He wants to be like him. The desire transforms into fuel. He clenches his teeth, pupil dilating. To reach that height, he cannot stop. He needs to keep running. He throws his body forward, arms pumping, legs driving into the ground with explosive power. He screams out his defiance, tearing himself away from the label that has defined him. No more being a deadbeat. The instructor watches from the sidelines, hand on his chin. He's surprised Eren continues pushing forward despite expecting him to give up. On the track, Eren is a mess of exhaustion. His vision blurs, body moving from sheer will rather than physical capability. He gasps for air, staggering as he forces himself past his limit. Finally, his body fails. Eren's legs buckle and he pitches forward, consciousness slipping away. The instructor moves with a blur of speed, catching the boy mid-fall. He holds the unconscious Eren, observing the sheer depletion. He ran until his body literally shut down. The instructor smiles, finding this perseverance incredibly interesting. Eren's eyes snap open. He stares up at a wooden ceiling, disoriented. A man with a ponytail introduces himself as Instructor Run Tarhel in charge of the recovery room. He boasts that Eren's swift consciousness is due to his superior medical skills. Eren offers a polite thank you. The instructor laughs, joking he'll likely see Eren here often before clarifying he's teasing. Tarhal produces a rolled scroll, explaining these are the preliminary test rankings. Eren unrolls the paper and scans until reaching the bottom. Rank 400. Dead last, Eren Pereira. Tarhal watches closely, explaining this is just preliminary, assuring rankings will shift within a year. He expects shame or despair, but Eren stares with calm, unbothered expression. Tarhal finds the reaction unexpected. Deciding Aaron is fine, he grabs him and shoves him toward the door, telling him to get moving. The scene shifts to a lecture hall where instructor Karaka addresses gathered trainees. He unveils a chart displaying the Chrono Swordsmanship School's schedule, a rigorous cycle of waking early, training, meals, and study. Free time is theirs to use, and training facilities remain open for personal practice. A blonde student smiles, excited by the prospect of practicing sword work. However, Karaka raises a finger with a sharp warning. The declaration rings out, striking students like a physical blow. The instructor's voice is absolute, forbidding any weapon training. The restriction sends shock through the crowd. Later that evening, 3 students stroll down the cobblestone path. Blue-haired nobleman Lloyd walks flanked by companions who fill the silence with chatter. One asks if the liberal arts class was boring. His friend quips it's probably because he couldn't understand. The first boy retorts to shut up. They push open gymnasium doors, stepping into a space humming with activity. Lloyd remarks it's spacious. His follower notes everyone's working hard. Lloyd says they'll get tired soon. His gaze drifts, arrested by a sight that freezes him. A silver-haired girl stands at a squat rack, shoulders burdened by immense weight. She drives upward, heavy plates rattling as she completes the repetition with terrifying power. It's Ilia Lindsay. Lloyd stares, sweat beading on his temple. Her presence alone is suffocating. In his mind's eye, the floor falls away, replaced by dark void. He envisions himself stranded on a crumbling pillar, looking up helplessly as Ilia ascends a staircase into darkness. She exists on a tier he cannot reach. The trance breaks with incredulous voices. One exclaims how strong she is. Another points toward a bench press, noting the deadbeat's training too. Lloyd sees the blonde boy struggling violently. His arms shake as he attempts to lift just the empty bar. One lackey laughs, questioning why he lazed around for 15 years if he was going to work this hard. The other says he might faint again. Nearby, Ilia wipes her face, indifferent to the mockery. Lloyd turns his back and commands his friends to stop wasting time. As Lloyd walks away, his eyes lock onto a girl with fiery red hair doing bicep curls. He recognizes Judith, the commoner who humiliated him by taking second place. He watches her strain against the weights. Lloyd's expression darkens, competitive aura flaring. He stares at her intently, vowing he won't lose to her again. The intensity is palpable. But Judith isn't intimidated. She stops her workout and glares back with annoyance. She snaps at him to stop looking. Lloyd flinches, caught off guard. He stammers, asking if she just spoke to him. Judith shoots back asking if he's dumb, stating she can't focus because of his stares and tells him to get lost. Lloyd's friend interjects, stepping forward with indignation. He explains Lloyd is from the family of Count Lloyd, someone that shouldn't be disrespected by the likes of her. Judith looks at the shouting lackeys with confusion and pity. She sighs, unimpressed, asking what's up with them. The gym air is thick with tension as a dark-haired student screams into the red-haired woman's face, gripping a dumbbell tightly. He demands she fall to her knees and beg for Sir Lloyd's mercy. The woman barely flinches. Instead, she wrinkles her nose, pointing out his breath reeks. A sharp, commanding voice cuts through, ordering them to shut it. The red-haired woman whips her head around, confused. Beside her, the blue-haired student looks equally bewildered. Both freeze, eyes widening. A girl with silver hair stands over a bench press, holding the barbell bar effortlessly in one hand, looming over the blonde boy lying beneath. He looks up with nervous sweat as she asks if they can have a talk. The gym falls into stunned silence. Even the red-haired woman swallows hard. The silver-haired girl stares down at the boy before leaning in close. She lowers her voice to a whisper, speaking directly into his ear while he lies paralyzed. The surrounding students watch with bated breath, unable to catch a syllable. As quickly as she arrived, she straightens up and walks away. She exits the training hall, and doors slam shut, leaving a vacuum of silence. The blonde boy sits up, looking dumbfounded. He glances to his side, realizing the temporary peace has evaporated. The red-haired woman and blue-haired student, along with others, rush toward him in a frenzy. They crowd his space, desperate to know what happened. The blonde boy tries to play it off, claiming he couldn't hear anything, and attempts to resume his workout. He pushes against the barbell, but it stops halfway. The red-haired woman has grabbed the weights, overpowering his lift and pinning the bar down. She looms over him, face shadowed. When the boy stammers an apology, she cuts straight to the chase. She tells him she has no interest in long conversations and demands he answer quickly. Leaning in until her face is inches from his, she invokes Ilia Lindsay and aggressively asks exactly what the silver-haired girl whispered to him. Judith stares at Aaron with incredulous eyes, demanding to know if Ilia only taught him how to use the drill room equipment properly. Aaron stammers that it's true. Judith leans in closer, questioning their relationship. Aaron insists it was his first time seeing her. Judith holds his gaze before straightening. She tells him to get rid of that expression before someone thinks she's bullying him. She marches off, leaving Aaron baffled. Lloyd appears, staring down at him with intense curiosity, asking what he and Ilia talked about. A month passes in a blur of grueling conditioning. Lloyd drinks water, listening to peers grumble about the lack of sword training. His eyes drift across the room. He watches Ilia standing over Aaron, instructing him like a drill sergeant. She commands him not to bend his back. Aaron grunts, struggling under the barbell, legs trembling. She adds to breathe evenly, watching his form like a hawk. Lloyd wipes his mouth, gaze darkening. His thoughts shift to the blonde boy struggling. To Lloyd, Aaron is the complete opposite of a genius. Lloyd reasons that although mockery and Ilia's encouragement might stimulate Aaron now, it's temporary. He'll stray back to his old ways. Determined, Lloyd rallies his followers, announcing they're going to the tracks. He steps out, but a blur whips past him. Judith tears across the courtyard, her speed explosive. Lloyd watches, rationalizing that commoners have no choice but to work hard. The sight fuels his competitive fire. Another 3 months pass. From the balcony, instructors observe with keen interest. Below, the unrivaled trio pushes their limits. Judith performs explosive box jumps. Lloyd runs laps with unyielding stamina. Ilia performs calisthenics with perfect grace. One instructor mentions the trio, then his gaze shifts to a lone figure on the bench press. Another instructor cuts him off firmly, saying they can't call him a deadbeat noble anymore. Aaron presses heavy dumbbells overhead, muscles defined, shirt soaked, eyes burning with focus. Later, trainees gather in the lecture hall. The head instructor booms that it's time for their midterm evaluation. Behind him, a curtain drops to reveal a map of a complex, winding course. He declares they only need to finish before the time limit. He adds this test is just an evaluation and rankings don't matter. Relief washes over some, but he continues. However, the swordmaster will award the top 5 preliminary trainees himself. The atmosphere shifts from fear to competitive hunger. It'll begin in 10 days. Outside, Lloyd stands calculating. Elsewhere, Judith slams her barbell down, having hit a new personal record. Satisfied, she decides that's enough, but desperate gasping interrupts her. She turns to see Aaron on his hands and knees, dry heaving from exertion. Judith frowns. He's training past his limits again. She cannot fathom possessing less perseverance than a boy rumored to be a lazy deadbeat. Fueled by competitive adrenaline, she grabs her barbell and resumes lifting with aggressive intensity. It's one day before the evaluation. 2 instructors discuss the roster. Their conversation is cut short by the arrival of a robust, bearded figure. It's Ian, the schoolmaster. The instructors stiffen. Ian waves off their formality, stating he prefers to see students with his own eyes. He moves through the hall, his jovial demeanor shifting to sharp observation. He comments on this year's high-quality batch. His eyes land on a silver-haired girl moving with precise rhythm. He recognizes her as the second genius of the Lindsay family. His expression softens into pity. His attention shifts to Judith, who's still lifting with frantic energy. Ian notes she's clearly overdoing it. Ian approaches but doesn't scold her. He merely chuckles at her stubbornness. Instead, he asks, "Where is Aaron Pereira?" A rhythmic, heavy thudding echoes from the corner. Metal strikes metal with hypnotic regularity. The instructors check the time and their eyes widen. Aaron has been lifting for nearly 30 minutes without a break. The younger instructor steps forward to intervene, but Ian raises a hand. He commands them to let the boy be. Ian's gaze is fixed on Aaron's face. The boy is drenched in sweat, teeth gritted in pure exertion, yet his rhythm doesn't falter. Ian watches with profound interest, realizing what he's witnessing is not just physical endurance. He sees a mind that has exerted perfect, absolute control over its body. The exhausted young man collapses onto the mattress. He exhales, staring at the ceiling while his chest heaves. His mind drifts through the chaotic events. He recalls the faces of those who once mocked him, realizing their attitudes have shifted. They're conscious of him now. His thoughts wander to Ilia, deciding that overanalyzing will get him nowhere. He covers his eyes. He tells himself to stop thinking and rest. As he closes his eyes, the room fades away, replaced by consuming darkness. The blackness shifts into a vivid crimson dreamscape. He's standing in a void filled with billowing red fabric. A towering figure in red robes stands before him. He feels small, like a child. He presses his face against the figure's chest, enveloped by the massive red cloak. The warmth is comforting. He clutches the fabric tightly. Suddenly, a blinding white light shears through the darkness. High above, a muscular warrior with flowing pale hair descends, wielding a colossal sword that splits the sky. The boy looks up in awe as wind whips around him. The scene shifts to departure. The boy, now dressed in white uniform, grips the red-robed figure's sleeve before letting go. He steps back with a confident smile. He thanks the guardian for everything. Turning his back on the red darkness, he walks toward consuming white light, declaring it's time to go. In the real world, the young man snaps awake. His body jerks as wisps of black shadowy energy steam off his skin. He sits up, the dark aura intensifying. As he stands, the shadows swirl aggressively around his limbs and back, coating him in a jagged, smoky power that radiates from his very core. Heavy boots impact the dirt as Aaron takes his place. He stands amidst the gathering crowd, tunic sodden with sweat, clinging to a frame wrapped in bandages, posture screaming exhaustion before the test has even begun. The whispers start immediately. They question if he trained through the night. Nearby, Brat Lloyd and his companion observe with disdain. To them, Aaron is a fool who has mismanaged his condition. Brat's gaze shifts to Judith, noting she looks equally ragged. A smirk touches his lips. As long as he maintains focus, second place is practically guaranteed behind prodigy Ilia. The instructor's voice booms. He outlines the midterm evaluation, a grueling 4-stage course comprised of the push press, box jump agility test, running track, and swimming. The rules are simple. Exceed the target goal to advance. It's an absolute evaluation of personal growth, not a race against neighbors. As trainees take their places behind weighted barbells, the atmosphere tightens. The command triggers instant movement. Ilia Lindsay moves with terrifying precision, her barbell rising and falling in a blur of silver hair and steel. She's visibly faster than everyone. Brat grits his teeth, hoisting his own weights, accepting he cannot match her speed. He focuses on his rhythm, intending to secure a runner-up position, but a disturbance in his peripheral vision shatters his concentration. Brat's eyes widen. Next to him, Aaron is moving. The boy who looked ready to collapse is driving the iron bar upward with relentless rhythmic intensity. Sweat flies as Aaron pumps the weight, breathing heavy but controlled. He lets out a guttural roar, forcing the bar up one last time with an explosion of effort. The instructor announces Ilia Lindsay, Stage 1 pass. Brat is barely processing when the impossible happens. Aaron Pereira, Stage 1 pass. Brat freezes, face flushing with disbelief. Aaron drops the weights and stumbles forward, chest heaving, steam practically rising from his overheated skin. The crowd gasps, stunned that the deadbeat has kept pace with the elite. Ignoring the shock, Aaron lurches toward the second station. He stands before the wooden box for the agility test. Doubts swirl around him, but as he crouches and explodes upward, landing firmly on the platform, his internal world shifts. He's surprised by his own power. He leaps down and rebounds instantly. His body feels different, not heavy with fatigue, but burning with strange, sustainable heat. He pushes aside fear of burnout, eyes narrowing with determination. He needs more. He speeds up, movements becoming a blur of kinetic energy as he vaults up and down, accelerating beyond what anyone thought possible. More! The cry rips through the training grounds, startling the instructor. He watches with confusion and awe before finally announcing Aaron Pereira has passed Stage 2. Nearby, Judith is lifting with terrifying ferocity, face contorted in pure exertion, veins bulging as she forces the heavy iron upward with explosive power. The instructor's surprise melts into a satisfied smile. The test transitions immediately. Under the harsh sun, recruits enter Stage 3, long-distance running. Aaron is already ragged, chest heaving with every step. Sweat drenches his shirt and vision swims, but he keeps moving. Ahead, Ilia creates a disheartening gap. She runs with upright, effortless posture. Aaron watches that retreating figure, his steps heavy and loud. He clutches his chest, puzzled by a sensation that has nothing to do with fatigue. It's a strange, tightening feeling in his heart. Sudden clarity amidst exhaustion. His eyes narrow, focusing intensely on Ilia's back. The desire manifests not as a wish to survive, but a demand to conquer. He wants to surpass the prodigy. Just as Aaron steals his resolve, a red blur explodes past him, kicking up a violent trail of dust. It's Judith, sprinting with the desperation of a madwoman. Aaron stares, bewildered by her speed. Inside Judith's mind, the world is a tunnel of traumatic memories. She recalls the agony of her origin, days doing push-ups with sharp needles beneath her, threatening to pierce her flesh if she collapsed. She hears phantom whispers of the elite, gossip about a commoner daring to enter chrono swordsmanship school, sneers calling her cheeky and special. Their doubt fuels her stride. She runs with fury born of humiliation and pain, screaming internally that they know nothing of her sacrifice. She vows never to lose. Driven by blinding rage, Judith reaches the edge and flings herself off the cliff without breaking stride, plunging into Stage 4, long-distance swimming. She hits the water hard and immediately surfaces, thrashing against waves and gasping for air. Shock paralyzes her as a jagged bolt of agony shoots through her calf. The muscle seizes violently, locking her leg in a crippling cramp. She thrashes in the water, panic setting in as her buoyancy fails. The timing feels cruel. She grits her teeth, face contorting in pain. Why did this have to happen now? She flails, trying to keep her head above the chopping waves, but her movements are jagged and ineffective. Ahead, she sees the other swimmer continuing forward, and bitter realization washes over her. She knows she pushed too hard, but the thought that stings worse is the possibility that even her absolute limit isn't enough. Does overworking mean nothing? She gasps, pleading with her limbs for strength, but the ocean pulls her down. Frustration gives way to the suffocating weight of water. She slips beneath the surface, the blue turning to dark, enveloping gray. It feels impossibly difficult to fight anymore. As she sinks deeper, watching bubbles of her own breath drift upward, her will dissolves. She's tired. The desire to simply close her eyes becomes overwhelming. The darkness closes in, silent and heavy, until the water above suddenly churns. A figure crashes through the surface, diving down with urgent speed, reaching into the void to grab her. Confusion creates a haze as she's hauled rapidly toward the light. They breach the surface, the sudden rush of air filling their lungs. Her rescuer gasps loudly, sputtering water and coughing while struggling to keep them both afloat. She hangs limp, chin resting weakly on the other's shoulder. Through the blur of exhaustion, she wonders who pulled her back from the dark. She forces her heavy eyelids open, tilting her head just enough to see the wet blonde hair of the boy supporting her. The water churns violently as Aaron kicks against the current, arm locked around Judith's chest. Judith, barely conscious, mutters that his interference is annoying. Aaron ignores her, gasping that they're almost there. His feet find purchase on the muddy lake bed. With a final heave, Aaron hauls himself and Judith onto the bank. He collapses, water streaming from his clothes, while Judith coughs violently. The instructor rushes down, ordering Aaron to leave Judith to him and get back to the race. Aaron doesn't hesitate. He scrambles to his feet, launching himself forward to rejoin the pack. Judith watches his retreating back, mentally branding him an absolute idiot. The scene shifts to the aftermath. Instructors discuss the results. The green-shirted instructor grins, noting the most remarkable element isn't the top ranker, but the boy who scraped in at the very bottom. He highlights the hero ranked 34th out of 35 passing candidates, Aaron Pereira. Elsewhere, Lance sneers, mocking Aaron. He preens, claiming that thanks to Aaron's foolishness, he secured 5th place. Lloyd walks past. Lance immediately shifts to fawning respect. As Lloyd distances himself, his mask cracks into frustration. He realizes the performance Aaron displayed was at a level he physically couldn't match. A heavy realization settles. If Judith hadn't burned out and required saving, he would have been pushed down to 4th place. Lloyd silently admits his total defeat to the boy everyone considers a fool. The following day, Aaron is heaving for breath on a dirt path. A sharp voice asks why he did it. Aaron looks up, startled to see Ilia with an intense gaze. Ilia demands answers. When Aaron asks if she means his rescue of Judith, Ilia confirms, asking why would he do such a thing. Aaron says quietly, he just felt like he had to. Ilia stares, disbelief evident. She asks if he knows that makes no sense. One of the instructors could have saved her. Why would he give up on a reward from the continent's greatest swordmaster? Not just that. The mouths that mocked him and gazes that looked down on him will continue. Aaron looks down. He asks softly if she's asking if he knows he gets called a deadbeat noble. His mind drifts inward. For a long time, his reality was a stagnant green swamp. He remembers sinking, the lethargy, the pathetic acceptance. But then, hands had reached in. His family had dragged him out when he couldn't move himself. Aaron looks back up. He remembers the water closing over Judith's head. He explains that he, who was able to get up due to the help of several people, didn't think it would be right to pretend not to see someone drowning. That's why he did that. That's the only reason. A gentle smile touches his lips. Ilia falls silent, eyes widening before turning sharply away. She asks if he'd never held a sword until last year. Aaron confirms. She says, skill is most important in sword training. He probably missed the opportunity for the swordmaster's guidance due to yesterday's evaluation. She starts to walk away. She won't offer him any more help. Even if he becomes everyone's laughingstock again, she hopes he doesn't regret this. Aaron watches her retreat. He calls out, asking why she helped him in the first place. Ilia pauses. She glances over her shoulder. She admits she's not sure. She guesses she just disliked people who talked about others without having a clue about them. Without another word, she resumes her pace. Later, the main hall fills with light. Students gather for the ceremony. The results are announced. Out of the original candidates, 113 successful trainees remain. At the front, the top 5 stand in line. Ilia is among them, alongside the blue-haired boy and 3 others. They'll receive a special reward and private audience with the swordmaster. Suddenly, the bald instructor interrupts with a wide grin. He announces they're leaving someone out. Preliminary trainee number 311, Aaron Pereira, come to the podium. Aaron stiffens, eyes going wide as heads turn. Even Ilia and the blue-haired trainee look back in surprise. The bald instructor addresses the assembly. He muses that competition is fun, but if you get too invested, you could miss important things. He smiles warmly, gesturing toward Aaron. Trainee Aaron Pereira didn't do that. He sacrificed himself and saved a drowning classmate. The swordmaster and all instructors agree this is worthy of praise. A hush falls, broken by rhythmic applause. Among the crowd, Judith claps fervently, a bright smile of gratitude on her face. The scene shifts to the swordmaster's office. The blue-haired noble admits he understands now, confessing his perspective had been narrow-minded. The swordmaster waves off the self-deprecation. The young noble acknowledges his arrogance. With newfound resolve, he vows to change his path. He offers a respectful bow and departs. As the boy walks out, the swordmaster watches. Internally, he catalogues the student's worth, great talent and keen awareness. In any other year, he would have easily secured first place. However, his gaze shifts to the next student, a silver-haired girl with eyes like cold steel. He laments that this year is an anomaly, filled with exceptionally gifted individuals. The girl asks for his personal guidance. The swordmaster leans forward, expression hardening. He tells her not to be swayed by others and to live her own life. He urges her to stop wasting time and suggests returning to her family. The girl's composure cracks, replaced by fierce intensity. She rejects his dismissal, shouting she wants him to guide her. The old man sighs, rubbing his temples. Realizing her stubbornness is immovable, he offers a compromise. He asks if she'd mind training in his office since it's quite large. The girl's intensity vanishes, replaced by quiet gratitude. Once she leaves, the swordmaster exhales. Finally, it's time for the last person. Aaron Pereira takes the seat. The swordmaster looks at him, expression inquisitive yet kindly. He asks if there's any specific reward Aaron would like. Internally, the swordmaster's gaze sharpens. This is the moment he's been waiting for. He's most interested in what this particular boy will say. Aaron sits nervously. He looks down, struggling to find words. After hesitation, he looks up, eyes earnest and vulnerable. He doesn't ask for power, a sword, or a secret technique. Instead, he asks simply how he can reconcile with someone. The young man sits on the chair, shoulders hunched. Irene apologizes, saying he doesn't know who to talk to about this. The old schoolmaster watches with gentle expression. He sees a boy who spent his life in isolation. He tells Irene not to be sorry, thanking him for being honest. The master's thoughts drift to rumors. A child who never left his room until age 15. This is his first real attempt at socializing. Someone must have finally reached out to the boy who had always been ridiculed. The master tells Irene to explain what happened. Time passes as Irene recounts the events involving Ilia Lindsay. When he finishes, he thanks the swordmaster. The master is struck by the unlikelihood. He never imagined Ilia Lindsay would form a connection with this boy. He leans forward, telling Irene to move on to the main topic. The master explains his conscience won't allow him to reward Irene with just words. He'll teach him a lesson about the sword. Ask anything. The offer is immense, yet Irene freezes. He stammers an apology, admitting he's not sure what to ask. He only started using a sword for a month before entering school. He doesn't know what to ask about or what he wants. Silence stretches. Irene begins to ramble, overwhelmed. Suddenly, the old man brings his hands together with a sharp impact in front of Irene's face. The burst cuts his rambling short. The master booms that there's nothing to be sorry for. Don't apologize too often. As a swordsman, that's how to stand up strong. Irene straightens up, self-doubt lifting. The master decides to postpone his reward. Irene can come later when he feels he's not good enough, or the master can decide when necessary. Irene stands, relief washing over him. After dismissing the boy, the schoolmaster watches Irene walk away. He muses about what a special child he is. Yet, suspicion tugs. Despite the boy's lack of formal knowledge, there's no anxiety regarding the sword itself. He seems to possess calm clarity. It's almost as if he's receiving assistance from someone else. Meanwhile, in the training hall, Irene struggles through push-ups. A sharp voice cuts through. Irene looks up to see Judith standing over him. Judith looks away, face flushing. She fidgets, struggling with her pride. She squeezes her eyes shut and pivots sharply, shouting, "Thank you." Irene blinks, taken aback. Judith turns back, face bright red but expression fierce. She'll repay her debt. Judith declares they should stick together from now on. Aaron blinks, confused. Judith leans in, annoyed. Since he always eats alone and she's without a companion, it's logical they combine their solitude. They can partner up for sword training. She delivers a hearty slap to his back. When he hesitates, Judith's face falls into ominous shadow. Her eyes glow with menacing light. Terrified, Aaron stammers out agreement. Satisfied, Judith reverts to cheerful self. She waves, announcing she'll take her leave. Aaron watches her retreat, rubbing his shoulder. She's definitely 3 years younger, yet he smiles. Despite her aggression, companionship isn't bad. Later, the hall fills with murmurs. Judith is in high spirits, loudly singing about grilling turtles. Aaron walks beside her, laughing nervously. Students whisper, unsettled. Lloyd's companions wonder if the near drowning has unhinged her. Lloyd isn't focused on Judith. His gaze drifts to where Ilia Lindsay walks in complete isolation. She moves with cold air. Lloyd notes the strange distance, sensing a shift. The speculation is cut short when a boot stomps. The instructor announces conditioning is over. Today they begin sword training. He grants them 2 hours to handle weapons freely. Students rush the racks. Judith grabs a wooden sword and tests swings. She smiles, realizing aggressive strikes now feel controlled. Lloyd tests his blade, marveling at how light it feels. While others practice, footsteps echo heavily. Aaron walks past rows of longswords. He stops in front of the wall mount where the heaviest equipment is stored. Hanging there is a massive wooden greatsword, a slab of timber resembling a construction beam. Aaron stares at it. Memories flood back. He reaches out and grips the hilt. His muscles tense as he heaves the weapon off the rack. It's absurdly heavy, but he holds it steady. In the background, the old schoolmaster watches with a knowing glint. Aaron adjusts his stance. He breathes in, focusing his entire being. With sudden, explosive motion, he swings the giant blade downward. The weapon cleaves the air with terrifying force, stopping inches from the ground. The displacement kicks up a violent cloud of dust and wind. The heavy whoosh reverberates through the hall. Lloyd and his friends freeze, eyes widening in shock. The atmosphere is thick with confusion. One trainee stammers about whether the performance is impressive, doubting the skill. Instructors offer critical analysis. The bearded man notes that while the form is rough and lacks polish, it adheres shockingly well to standard stance. It's technically sound, if unrefined. The silver-haired girl watches in silence. Students exchange looks of disbelief, recalling the blonde boy claimed to have no prior training. A sudden wave of hostility cuts through. The blue-haired noble narrows his eyes, thoughts dripping with disdain. He considers the display ignorant arrogance. He moves with purpose, boots striking the floor with heavy thuds. He stops behind the blonde boy and shouts Irene Pereira with commanding force. The blonde boy turns, startled. Lloyd raises his practice sword, leveling the tip at the other student's chest. He declares a challenge to a duel, voice echoing. The reaction is instantaneous. Collective shock ripples through the crowd. The redhead, silver-haired girl, and whispering boys gasp. Instructors look on with widened eyes. The blonde boy stands frozen. Tension mounts as silence reclaims the room. A bead of sweat trickles down the blonde boy's temple, eyes wide with anxiety. He looks uncertain, gaze shifting to the elderly headmaster watching calmly. The old man offers a single, slow nod, a silent gesture of permission. Seeing this, hesitation vanishes. He sets his jaw, expression shifting from nervousness to steely determination. With newfound resolve, he shouts his acceptance, agreeing to the duel. The tension spikes as the red-haired instructor storms forward, demanding to know what they're thinking. Formal duels are strictly reserved for those who completed sword training classes. Among the crowd, a green-haired student mutters about the absurdity. Why would Brett challenge Irene, whose swordsmanship consists of nothing more than swinging a heavy blade without technique? The instructor attempts to shut down the confrontation. However, the elderly swordmaster intervenes with a gentle smile, suggesting there are times when exceptions must be made. The instructor stiffens, silenced by authority. The old man stands between the combatants, issuing a stern safety warning. Both shout their agreement. With a calm command, the swordmaster signals the beginning. Brett moves instantly, body blurring as he launches a high-speed lunge. Irene barely reacts, hoisting his massive greatsword to shield his body. Brett's blade strikes with heavy impact that vibrates through Irene's arms. The blonde boy grimaces, sweat breaking out. Brett doesn't relent. He flows into a rapid sequence of strikes. A red-haired girl in the crowd narrows her eyes, sensing Brett is testing his opponent. Inside the ring, Brett dissects Irene's movements in real time. While Irene's reaction speed is surprisingly decent, his fundamentals are terrible. Concluding that Irene's skill level is worse than anticipated, Brett decides to gauge raw power. He creates an opening, baiting an attack. Irene takes the bait, heaving the greatsword upward for a desperate overhead smash. A dark aura trails the weapon as he brings it down with a shout. Brett's eyes widen at the sheer pressure. However, the attack is telegraphed and clumsy. Brett sidesteps the crushing blow, letting the heavy blade slam harmlessly. Capitalizing on Irene's overcommitment, Brett lashes out with a precise flick against the greatsword's guard. Irene's grip fails, and his weapon is sent spinning, leaving him defenseless. The greatsword skids across the stone tiles. Irene stands breathless, eyes wide with shock. The proctor's voice booms. The duel has ended. Winner, Brett Lloyd. Later, inside the lecture hall, an instructor announces that based on test results, trainees will be divided into classes. He reads names of the elite: Ilia Lindsay, Brett Lloyd, Judith are the 10 people in Class A. The instructor warns them their high rank grants tougher training. The list continues. Judith leans in close to Irene, grinning. She tells him to trust in his big sis from Class A, confident he'll be placed reasonably well. Irene agrees nervously, but as the instructor finishes Class C, sudden silence falls. Judith realizes Irene's name hasn't been called. The instructor clears his throat, and the last person, Irene Pereira, is in Class F. Irene stands frozen, looking utterly doomed. Later, in a secluded clearing, Judith paces, venting her fury. She complains about Brett, calling him an annoying bastard. She refuses to accept the result, shouting Irene shouldn't be discouraged. Her tirade is cut short when she notices Irene staring with calm gaze. Irene speaks with disarming sincerity. He tells her not to be so angry. While he's deeply grateful for her concern, seeing her upset bothers him more than the loss itself. Judith's face erupts in crimson blush, composure shattering. Flustered, she lashes out in panic, smacking Irene while shouting denial that she was ever concerned. Irene winces, complaining about the bruise. Meanwhile, Brett collapses onto his bed, letting out a heavy sigh. His mind drifts back to the duel, replaying the moment Irene swung his sword. It wasn't the technique that haunts him, but the sheer, unbreakable will he saw in Irene's eyes. Brett realizes he'd instinctively dodged the vertical slice without thinking, overwhelmed by the feeling that the attack was unstoppable. Back in the training grounds, Irene stands before Rune Tarhal, the temporary instructor for Class F. Rune confirms the boy knows no techniques other than basic slices. When Irene apologizes, Rune laughs it off. He poses a question. What does someone who started late need in order to keep up? Irene guesses hard work. Rune's expression shifts from friendly to intense. He grips the massive blade on his back. No, he declares, drawing the weapon with violent burst that creates a shockwave. It's talent. The instructor slams the practice sword into the earth, the impact sending a tremor and kicking up dust. Of course, hard work is important as well, but it doesn't apply to you, who is more than a few years behind. The student swallows hard. 1 week, the instructor announces. Familiarize yourself with basic sword skills within a week. If you pass, you'll immediately be promoted to Class C. And if I fail, nothing will change. But if you don't have at least that much talent, it would be best for you to leave the academy. The boy clenches his fists, expression shifting to determination. He shouts his resolve. I'll do my best. The instructor's stern facade cracks into a grin. The grueling week begins immediately. The boy swings the oversized wooden sword. By the second day, the instructor barks corrections. Bend properly. Too much strength in your shoulders. By the third day, movements begin to smooth out. Good, you're doing well. Day 5 brings exhaustion, but stance holds firm. On the 6th day, air whips violently as the boy cuts through space with increasing velocity. The instructor watches, realizing he wasn't even this skilled in his own youth. The boy possesses genuine talent. By the final evening, the boy stands amidst trees, steam rising from his body. He turns to Judith, asking for a final check before tomorrow's test. I'm pretty meticulous, Judith warns. If it looks ridiculous, I'll kick you. The boy takes a breath. Judith watches with casual smile that vanishes the moment he moves. The air shrieks as the blade becomes a dark blur, slicing through wind with terrifying speed. Judith's eyes widen, confidence replaced by shock. How was that? The boy asks, panting. Judith recovers and thrusts a thumb upward, beaming grin returning. Later, in the recovery room, the instructor sits with a warm drink. A staff member enters, surprised. The instructor adjusts his glasses, satisfied smile playing on his lips. He thinks of the blonde student, visualizing him clad in armor, holding his weapon with newfound confidence. Against the odds, the boy made it to Class C. The cafeteria bustles with noise. Judith attacks her meal with ferocity, a tower of empty plates stacked beside her. She lectures the blonde boy, criticizing his modest portion size. Nearby, Lloyd maintains bored indifference while his companion Lance sneers, mocking Judith's appetite. Judith doesn't explode. Instead, she turns with smug expression. She loudly speculates that Lance must be harboring a secret crush on her, considering how intently he's been watching. She apologizes with mock sympathy because he simply isn't her type. Lance's face contorts with humiliation. He stammers, but Lloyd intervenes. His voice is cool and authoritative. He orders Lance to stop and walk away. Lloyd advises that badmouthing others serves no purpose. Judith watches them leave, noting that Lloyd has been surprisingly mature lately. Turning back, Judith probes her companion about his relationship with Lloyd. When the boy denies any quarrel, she shifts the topic to the silver-haired girl sitting in solitude, Ilia. Judith points out that since he's in Class A, he must see the prodigy frequently. She leans in with mischievous grin, asking if they've become friends. The question sends the boy into panic. He leaps up, stammering denial. Judith bursts into laughter, revealing she was teasing. Her expression sobers as she looks toward Ilia. Nothing has changed. Ilia remains the untouchable top ranker, isolated by peers crushed by her talent. Judith recounts rumors of Ilia practicing alone in the armory every evening. She turns back with sharp grin, telling him he needs to get promoted quickly if he ever hopes to stand on Ilia's level. The setting shifts to the training hall. The boy stands ready as he signals the start. Judith launches forward in a blur. The boy braces himself. Judith's attack is not just fast, it's heavy. She swings with terrifying force that threatens to buckle his knees. He manages to block, but the impact reverberates through his bones. With desperate cry, the boy heaves his wooden sword overhead. Judith watches with sharp eyes. She doesn't flinch. She raises her weapon to intercept, catching the blow with jarring impact. Judith grins as she feels his strength falter. With sharp exhale, she shoves back, overwhelming his stance. The boy's eyes widen as his balance crumbles. Judith laughs, delivering a sweeping counterattack. The force lifts him off his feet, sending him crashing onto the tiles. Dust settles as he lies on the floor, groaning. Judith stands over him, sword resting against her shoulder. She admits he has improved a bit, though quickly adds he's still nowhere near her level. She glances around the empty hall. Shadows are lengthening. She decides that's enough, pointing out it's late. As the boy picks himself up, Judith leans in with mischievous glint. She mentions that if he heads to the Soyan armory, he might find Ilia there. The boy's face flushes, stammering protest, but the seed is planted. Later, the boy stands in the quiet courtyard. The silver-haired girl pauses her training. She stands motionless, black sword held vertically. She senses him immediately. Turning, she fixes him with piercing gaze and asks what he wants. The boy shrinks, managing only a shaky greeting. Ilia stares impassively, repeating her demand. He swallows nervousness and steps forward, holding out a small blue pouch. He explains he came to give her this, a letter and gift from home. Ilia looks at the pouch, confusion softening her expression. She asks why he's giving it to her. The boy pauses. He explains he has a younger sister. A memory flashes of a girl with golden hair, fierce and frustrated. He explains his sister was never good at dealing with people, just like Ilia. Because of that, misunderstandings were common, and they would quarrel. But the day after a fight, she would always leave a letter and gift by his bedside. The boy rubs his neck, smiling sheepishly. He admits he's also bad with words. Organizing thoughts to speak them is a struggle. So he decided to write a letter instead. He tells Ilia he finally understands why his sister preferred writing them. "Do you think I'll help you again because of this?" Ilia asks, voice cool. She stands opposite him, posture rigid. Seeing his discomfort, her expression softens just a fraction. "It's fine though," she mutters. The boy offers a sheepish smile. "I'm sorry for interrupting. I'll leave now." He retreats, leaving her alone with the pouch. Later that night, Ilia sits at her desk, illuminated by lamp glow. She reads the note, faint smile touching her lips. "How childish," she whispers. She reaches for the pouch and loosens the drawstrings. She retrieves a simple, polished metal band, a bracelet. As she holds it up, her eyes widen. Amusement vanishes instantly, replaced by sudden, violent jolt. A memory crashes into her mind. She sees a hand smeared with fresh blood, reaching out, and a wide eye filled with despair. "A bracelet," she breathes, voice trembling. The metal band resonates, sending a shockwave through her. It's an Amur Adonis. Dark energy swirls around her, hair whipping upward. Her face contorts in mixture of anguish and overwhelming power. The room shakes as a pillar of blinding white light erupts from her body. Slowly, the light recedes. Energy dissipates, leaving her standing, chest heaving. She turns her head, mind racing with new perspective. Maybe, she thinks, grip tightening. Maybe I was too wrapped up with that. The scene shifts to the training hall. The red-haired girl stretches. "We're increasing the intensity today," she announces with grin. Beside her, Irene looks concerned. Their conversation is cut short by heavy boots. Both turn to see a blue-haired student marching toward them. The red-haired girl steps forward defensively. "Did you come here to pick a fight?" she demands. The newcomer stops. "I have something to tell you," he says. He turns his gaze past her, locking eyes with the blonde boy. "I need to tell you something too, Irina Perriera." "Why me?" the red-haired girl grumbles. Is this guy crazy? Ignoring her, the blue-haired student steps closer to Irene, shedding his arrogance. From what you've shown at the midterm evaluation and in our last fight, he begins earnestly. You have this deep concentration that I don't seem to have. Irene blinks, surprised. The blue-haired boy presses a hand to his chest. I would like you to teach me that. I'll also teach you how to use the sword. I would like for us to make up for each other's shortcomings and grow together. The murmurs of students create a low hum in the training hall. Judith breaks the quiet, resting her blade against her shoulder, expression sharp and accusatory. What are you up to? She demands. Aren't you trying to make use of him? The blue-haired student meets her gaze with unflinching calm. Sure, you're right. Judith's jaw drops. What? You're pretty shameless. But is that really a bad thing? He counters with a smirk. I can get satisfactory growth on my own, but that method is inefficient here. I won't be the only one using you. You guys can also use me. You've also been competing with Irene all the time. He raises a clenched fist, demeanor shifting to impassioned. I believe I need to gain experience from various people. The swordsmanship we learn doesn't end here. This is an opportunity. Surrounding students whisper in awe. Fine, he says decisively to Irene. Judith looks baffled. Irene looks anxious. But will it be okay? Irene asks, shoulders slumped. I'm way too incompetent. The blue-haired student smiles. I told you already that you have something that I don't. Internally, his mind races. Despite training for the same amount of time, why does a gap remain? He realizes the quality of that time differs. In his mind's eye, he sees Irene training. From beginning to end, Irene Pereira does not once lose concentration. That's the secret. He looks intently at Irene. Let me know. How do you manage to stay so focused? Irene blinks. I don't really know. The student sighs. I expected you to say that. All geniuses usually say similar things. What do you mean, genius? Irene stammers. No, from what I see, you are a genius. The student interrupts firmly. Maintaining your concentration isn't an easy feat. I have private training today. Judith, you're practicing with me tomorrow, right? Judith bristles. What? I never agreed. The student stops and turns back. Oh, and let me give you advice. Irene Pereira, stop putting yourself down. You were born into the Pereira family, which is of noble blood. Now you've shown acts and ability that befits one from a noble family. So be proud of yourself as a noble. Irene watches him go, stunned. Beside him, Judith sticks out her tongue. Bleh. Am I the only one who feels like puking? Time passes. In the hall, the blue-haired student stands beside Irene, fulfilling his end of the bargain. Your hand is too fast here, he instructs. Brett holds his blade steady, instructing Irene on the finer points. He emphasizes the movement must be singular and explosive. To demonstrate, Brett lunges forward, a blur of precision. Later, Judith stomps away, shouting she refuses to continue. Brett and Irene watch with bemused expressions. Brett estimates her mood will last about a week. They share a light laugh before heading to the dining hall. The meal is noisy as Judith aggressively shovels food. A silver-haired maid approaches. Irene informs her he's read the letter. Judith immediately stops chewing, eyes widening. She leans in, demanding to know if Irene just confessed his feelings. Flustered, Irene frantically waves his hands. That night, Irene lies in bed. His mind replays Brett's advice about concentration. He stares at the ceiling, determining he needs to improve his mental focus. He closes his eyes. The darkness of sleep takes him. The silhouette of the great swordsman appears. The dream crystallizes, placing Irene on barren, rocky terrain. Irene looks down at his hands. Unlike previous dreams, he feels a distinct sensation in his palms, a phantom weight, a vibration coursing through his body. The man raises his colossal sword, and Irene feels the ghost of that movement within his own muscles. Irene wakes with a sharp gasp. He sits up in darkness, sweat clinging to his skin. The sensation is fading fast. He must grab a sword immediately to anchor this fleeting feeling. By sunrise, Irene looks like a walking corpse. Dark circles hang under his eyes. Judith looks at him with confusion and annoyance. When they cross swords, Irene's gaze drifts, unfocused. Judith yells at him to pay attention. Moments later, Judith finds Irene slumped on a bench, fast asleep. She begins to shout, but Brett intervenes. Suddenly, Irene springs from the bench. His eyes are glazed, but his body snaps into a perfect combat stance. Just as quickly, his energy cuts out, and he collapses back. Brett stares, bewildered. When Irene rouses himself, Brett approaches. Irene offers a tired smile and explains he's training to improve his concentration. Though it isn't going well, Brett suggests it might be akin to meditation training. Irene nods vaguely. Judith stares down at Brat sprawled across the bench. When Judith points out his slumber, Brat corrects her. He insists he wasn't sleeping, but engaging in meditation training. Judith's grin sharpens as she asks if this technique involves snoring. Brat flushes. He quickly pivots, declaring his posture must have been the issue. He adjusts himself, adopting the classic lotus position. However, the allure of Irene's unique method is too tempting. Brat decides to try Irene's way, lying back down. He closes his eyes. Tranquility washes over him. The world fades to black. Deep in the void, a voice pierces through. Sir Lloyd. Brat's eyes flutter open as Irene comes into focus. The calmness was just deep sleep. Judith stands over him, scolding him. She reminds him that Irene is a special case and that trying to mimic his sleep training is useless. Brat refuses to concede. He argues that one can never know the results without attempt. Judith sighs, dismissing him. Meanwhile, in the administrative wing, the swordmaster stands by the window. His assistant reports there are no issues and confirms that Irene Pereira has officially been promoted to Class B. The assistant adds that the support from Brat and Judith significantly accelerated his growth. The swordmaster turns, a glint of interest in his eyes. The assistant offers a knowing smile. He notes that it's actually Brat Lloyd who is acting as the catalyst. Brat is creating small waves of change throughout the student body. Back in the training hall, the truth is on full display. The room is silent, filled with palpable focus. Rows of students sit on the stone floor, swords resting beside them. They're all sitting cross-legged, eyes closed in deep concentration. In the center sits Brat, the picture of serenity. Despite his earlier failed experiment, his dedication to meditation has taken root, inspiring the entire class to follow his lead. A wooden training sword skids across the stone floor. The duel is over. The instructor announces Brat Lloyd as winner. Brat stands tall, one hand raised in victory. On the ground, Judith lies sprawled, groaning. "This bastard," Judith shouts, scrambling up. "One more time." Brat merely smirks, turning his back. The instructor's sharp rebuke cuts through her tirade. Later, the instructor watches from a distance, a warm smile softening his features. Despite their constant quarreling, he recognizes the fire in them. They're improving at a speed that defies expectation. His gaze lingers on Brat. The blue-haired boy is advancing rapidly. Brat clenches his fist, measuring the newfound power. If he keeps improving, perhaps he can finally reach the unattainable. His eyes drift toward a silhouette. Ilia, practicing alone. She is the summit he aims to conquer. Deep in the forest, Irene concentrates on his own path. He heaves a massive greatsword upward. He drives the blade down. The sword strikes earth, kicking up dust. Thanks to meditation training, his focus has improved. But he knows it's not enough. "Irene," Judith calls out, approaching with Brat. The swordmaster called for a gathering. "Let's go. We're going to the auditorium, right?" "No," Brat corrects. "The martial arts arena." The arena is vast, filled with students sitting in disciplined silence. The swordmaster, an elderly man with thick white beard, stands before them. "It's been 9 months. Let me get straight to the point. The final assessment." Tension moves through the students. "Unlike midterm assessments, we evaluate based on your potential abilities. You just need to demonstrate the area you excel the most. I hope you do your best during the remaining 90 days. Suddenly, the swordmaster reaches for his robe. And this is quite early, but he casts the robe aside, revealing combat-ready tunic. A thin sword appears in his hand, and the atmosphere shifts instantly. "I've prepared a gift. It's just an old man's sword dance, but I sincerely hope you can learn something from it." He closes his eyes. When they snap open, they're sharp and piercing. He moves. Blue light trails behind his blade as he twists and strikes, the air warping. He spins, the sword becoming a blur of azure luminance. It's beautiful and terrifying. Ilia watches, mouth agape, completely entranced. With a final movement, the swordmaster brings his display to a halt. "This is where my sword dance ends." He sheathes his weapon. "I wish you good luck." The students remain frozen. Whispers break out. One student wipes sweat, face pale. Another stares blankly, struggling to comprehend the gap. Later, Brat and Judith recover in the castle's corridors. Brat asks if she found the dance amazing, but she sits on the bench, staring at the floor, unresponsive. Brat sighs, leaning in with teasing grin. He waves his hand in front of her face. The provocation works. Judith snaps, roaring at him to shut up. Undeterred, Brat observes that her bad mood must be about Irene. Judith flinches. Brat notes that Irene has been focusing solely on meditation despite the final evaluation being imminent. He asks aloud if Irene will be fine, then immediately answers with confident smile. Irene will definitely pass. Judith demands to know the source of his confidence. Brat explains. The test is based on potential ability, not current skill. It's a measure of future growth. He asks who has shown the greatest growth over the last 9 months. The realization hits Judith. It's Irene. Brat tells her to stop worrying. Judith, regaining composure, huffs, claiming she was never worried. With confidence restored, Judith draws her sword, declaring she can now focus on taking first place. Brat immediately shoots down her fantasy. First place is impossible because Ilia Lindsay will take it. Judith's temper explodes. She shouts, asking why he has to bring Ilia up. Brat reasons that since Ilia is learning the swordsmanship that put the Lindsay family in the ranks of the most prestigious families, no one else stands a chance. Judith is having none of it. She screams back, asking if lineage is the only reason. She yells that if results are decided by family background, there's no point. In her fury, she crosses a dangerous line, loudly mocking the Lindsay family. She shouts there's nothing great about them, bringing up the rumor that Ilya's brother was defeated by a common orphan and now hides in shame. Brat's face drains of color. He freezes, eyes going wide as he looks past Judith. Before she can turn, the atmosphere drops to freezing chill. Behind Judith, students recoil in fear. Standing directly behind Judith is Ilia Lindsay. She stands motionless, but a dark aura radiates from her. Ilya's eyes reveal a gaze as cold and sharp as a blade. Ilia refuses to rise to the bait, voice steady. She declares that neither curses nor insults toward her family hold any power over her. Her composure only infuriates the blue-haired trainee facing her. His patience snaps, and he shouts a desperate challenge, demanding she pick up her sword for immediate duel. Before the situation escalates, senior trainees step in, blocking the path. They issue a stern warning that any fighting will result in immediate expulsion. The threat forces a pause, but the boy is far from finished. He shifts from rage to arrogance, declaring to the entire room that he intends to secure first-place rank again. The status quo will remain unchanged. He continues, claiming he doesn't even need his own family's secret swordsmanship to dominate. The standard curriculum is more than enough to prove his skill is leagues ahead. Ilia, finding his posturing tiresome, turns and begins to walk away. Her disinterest stings him, and he calls out her name. When she keeps walking, he plays a different card. He calls out the name of her legacy, the Sky Sword, the Lindsay family's signature style. He recites its ancient history, speaking of the demon race that ruled the skies 400 years ago, and the name bestowed by the demon dragon king. The specific weight causes Ilia to stop. She glances back, questioning his pivot. A smirk touches his face. He has her attention. He admits he has always wanted to witness just how great that legendary style actually is. That won't be happening, Ilia replies, tone flat. She turns away again. Really? That's a shame then, the boy says, voice dropping into calculated taunt. He watches her retreating back and delivers his ultimatum. He warns her that if she refuses to show him the Sky Sword style, he will take her first-place ranking from her. The threat pierces through Ilia's indifference. She freezes mid-step, eyes widening in shock and anger. The great sword feels heavier in Aaron's hands, not because of physical weight, but due to the burden of expectations. He stands alone in the stone hall, chest heaving, sweat dripping. This isn't it. The sensation he's chasing remains elusive. He closes his eyes. He sees the phantom, the man with the perfect swing, walking away. Aaron reaches out, but the figure drifts further. He thought he was closing the distance, but the gap only widens. He shakes his head to dispel the doubt. He needs to reset. Aaron drops to meditate, but the moment his skin touches stone, he pauses. A realization strikes. Why separate the stillness of mind from the weight of weapon? Wouldn't it be better to meditate while holding the sword? He tightens the bandages and grips the hilt. Standing up, he assumes his stance, closing his eyes to find silence within strain. The air begins to shift, a faint aura rising as he merges focus with steel. The scene shifts to the main training hall. Aaron deflects an incoming strike with effortless precision. The other student drops his weapon, panting. I give up. Brett approaches, noting Aaron seems winded, pushing his body to absolute limit. Aaron offers a tired smile. The words you said to Ilia that day really impacted us. Brett flinches. Sure, whatever. The moment is cut short. Blur, stop making that face. Judith stands behind them. Get your sword, blue hair, she barks, launching a massive overhead swing. The air screams as Judith brings her blade down. Brett raises his sword, catching the blow. Judith grins, expecting him to buckle, but her eyes widen when Brett vanishes from sight. He's moving with velocity she hadn't anticipated. He has become faster, she thinks. She pivots and swings, but Brett meets her strike with terrifying solidity. Steel crashes against steel. Judith grunts. He isn't just relying on technique. He has cultivated raw physical strength. As she's forced back, breathless, she looks past her opponent. Maybe it's possible for Aaron to surpass Ilia and claim first place. Sweat drips down Judith's face. Despite her effort, she cannot defeat him. The admission is bitter, yet fuels new fire. A confident grin spreads. I won't be so hot-headed anymore, she declares with newfound maturity. I'll win after I become a full-time trainee. The blue-haired swordsman exhales. Let's stop here for today. We shouldn't overdo it before evaluation. Judith immediately turns. Her sparring partner watches, confused. What's with you? You didn't get mad once. I have something to do. You'll get hurt if you know too much, she teases, marching away. Left alone, the swordsman looks down at his wooden sword. A smirk touches his lips. He knows he has become stronger. In his mind's eye, a vision of a silver-haired girl appears. It really feels like I can be on equal footing with her. And now, Irene, I can face your sword head-on. Elsewhere, inside a quiet chapel, Ilia struggles. The blonde boy stands with a massive practice sword. He heaves the blade, testing new posture, but frustration etches deep lines. He lowers the weapon, breathing hard. He has tried changing stance, adjusting grip, shifting weight, yet nothing feels different. He's hitting a wall. Don't you feel stuffy? Ilia turns to see Judith. Come on, let's get some fresh air. Soon they're lying back on a grassy slope, staring up at vast sky. You can rest, Judith says. Are we allowed to be here? Sure. We can just leave if someone says otherwise. They lie in silence before Judith speaks. Are you prepared? The final evaluation. We have less than 15 days left. Ilia sits up. Oh, I'll just continue what I've been doing and try my best. That's a weak reply. How about you? Are you confident? Judith grins. Of course I'm going to try my best. Anyways, Ilia, you should ask if that annoying brat is confident. Ilia tilts his head. Confident in winning? Judith sighs. You're really slow-witted. Her teasing evaporates. She looks down, expression turning somber. I'm sorry. Huh? For not being around for a while. At first we dueled and I was able to teach you some moves. It's fine. You don't have to feel sorry. I'm an orphan. The confession cuts through the air. He stares, eyes widening. I'm not telling you so that you feel sorry. Memories surface of a frantic child, snatching loaves, fleeing merchants, scraping by in filth. While trying to stay alive, all I did was pickpocket and steal. I had never done anything to be grateful for, or received anything to be thankful for until now. That's why on the day you saved me when I almost drowned, I got angry instead of saying thank you. She turns with a wry smile. Honestly, it feels cheesy. So I tried to repay you in my own way, but it didn't work out. Suddenly, the somber mood vanishes. Judith leans in with fierce intensity. Do well. Make sure to do well in the finals. Pass and become a full-time trainee. I'll help you so you don't feel uneasy. The boy's surprise melts into a bright grin. Okay. Judith immediately recoils. If I walk with you now, I'll be embarrassed to death, so leave after 5 minutes. He watches her retreat. Judith, you don't have to be sorry. Left alone, he turns to the vast landscape. The sun is setting. He realizes that while she was apologizing, he's the one who has truly been missing. The boy who stands here now is different. He sits on the grassy hill, bathed in twilight. He thinks about the person he used to be, the one who rotted away in bed. Now, he sits under open sky, mind clear. The year was not wasted. A profound sense of gratitude swells for everyone who pushed him forward. Judith, Brett, Ilia, the swordmaster, the instructors. He stands, grip tightening. This is the time to pay back everything I've learnt. He draws the blade. For so long, the problem was merely trying to imitate the look of a swordsman. He closes his eyes, seeking something deeper. Darkness envelops his consciousness, swirling into a void where only his spirit remains. In the center of that mental cosmos, a light ignites. He focuses, pulling the power from the depths to the surface. A brilliant golden aura erupts from his body, taking the shape of a massive greatsword that encases him in pure energy. 2 weeks later, the atmosphere in the Great Hall is electric. Students stand in formation. The instructor bellows. And now, the final evaluation begins. A single leaf drifts from the vaulted ceiling. Below, a trainee tracks its descent. As the leaf dips, he lunges, his wooden blade cutting a sharp arc, slicing the falling greenery into precise fragments. Nearby, another student faces a massive boulder. He raises his practice blade and brings it down. The impact is solid, the top half sliding cleanly off. Ho, excellent speed and accuracy, an observer notes. However, the elderly swordmaster strokes his beard. Everyone is performing beyond my expectations, but it's still a little underwhelming. The instructor bellows, Judith, please come to the front. Judith steps out. Her red hair frames a face set in grim determination. She carries a heavy broadsword. Instead of approaching the targets, she stops and looks up. Swordmaster, can trainees receive their assessments together? I feel we can show our strengths more clearly through sparring. The other trainee agreed as well. The swordmaster's interest is piqued. Yes, that sounds interesting. Who is that trainee? From the crowd, a figure steps forward. It's Brett Lloyd. The two students take their positions. Brett draws his thin blade. Ready, Judith? Judith draws her massive weapon. Brett, today, I will surpass you. She explodes forward. Brett's grin sharpens. Of course, that's what makes you Judith. Judith swings. It's a vertical catastrophe of red energy and steel. She brings the greatsword down with a roar. Brett throws his body backward as the heavy weapon crashes down, the shockwave rattling onlookers. She doesn't let up. Using momentum, she twists, turning the blade into a whirlwind of violence. Heavy impacts resonate. Thud, thud, thud. Such vicious sword clashes. The trainees gasp. Brett is pushed to his limit. He catches a heavy overhead smash, knees buckling. Kook! The sheer mass threatens to crush his guard. Judith's eyes burn. She pivots, swinging horizontally. Her sword collides with Brett's defense, sending sparks outward. Brett disengages, using superior speed. He weaves through air, a blur of blue motion, dodging the heavy black streaks. So fast, the crowd cries. Brett sees an opening and lunges, but Judith anticipates. She slams her blade, deflecting with such force that the impact looks like an explosion. Brett is sent skidding back. Judith descends like a crimson hawk, delivering a barrage. The velocity creates streaks of pressure. Below, the stone tiles crack. Sparks fly as wooden swords collide. The bearded instructor notes the relentless nature of Judith's swordsmanship. However, Brett meets her fury with fluid defense. His blade moves like water, parrying with minimal effort. Brett's eyes narrow, catching a microscopic opening. With sharp exhalation, he shifts to offense. The wood connects solidly, forcing a pained grunt from Judith. She recovers instantly. Brett offers a confident grin. They lunge for the final exchange. The strikes become faster, heavier, sharper, culminating in a catastrophic impact that sends blinding light and dust billowing. As the haze drifts, the winner emerges. Judith stands frozen, staring down at the splintered remains of her training sword. She clutches the broken hilt, realization sinking in that she failed. While incredibly close, the superior technique belonged to Brett. Brett lowers his weapon, unable to suppress a triumphant smile. The instructor claps, praising the spar. Both students bow. The instructor calls the next participant. The name called is Ilia Lindsay. The silver-haired girl steps forward, her presence commanding immediate silence. As she walks past Brett, he looks at her with fierce determination. He thinks of his growth, believing he might finally stand a chance. Ilia is asked what she intends to demonstrate. She answers calmly that she will display her family's swordsmanship. The instructor's eyebrows raise, recognizing the fame of the sky sword style. Ilia grips her long, dark training sword. Brett watches, smile returning, eager to witness. Ilia swings her blade, the movement leaving a faint trail of purple energy. Violent currents of air erupt. The sudden gale is so potent it feels like a physical blow. The bearded instructor flinches, sweat beading. In the center, a swordswoman with silver hair twists, dragging a blade that leaves a trail of dark, violet energy. The atmosphere shrieks as the pressure intensifies, the weapon carving a vortex. Its overwhelming, suffocating power. Debris scatters, forcing onlookers to shield their eyes. The force beats against them, relentless. Even other students recoil, unable to withstand the raw wind pressure from a single swing. As the dust settles, the older instructor stares with wide, trembling eyes. It's the Sky Sword, a legendary technique that defies ordinary swordsmanship. To the side, Brett stands paralyzed. His pupils dilate as he gazes into the lingering aura. Where others see a technique, he sees a monster. A towering wall separating geniuses from the mediocre. The realization hits with crushing weight. He had been dreaming of chasing something that never truly existed for someone like him. "Hey, Brett!" A voice snaps him out of spiraling thoughts. The redhead girl grins and points. It's finally here. Irene's turn. Irene, the blonde boy with the great sword, steps forward. He looks calm, almost serene. The girl cheers him on loudly, but Brett cannot join in. His heart hammers, but not from excitement. He watches Irene's retreating back, and a cold sensation grips his stomach. He clutches his fist until knuckles turn white. Breath coming in short rasps. A memory surfaces, a moment where Irene had smiled with genuine warmth. "You're a really nice person, Brett. You have such a bright and warm aura. I always feel at ease when I'm with you." Brett remembers how he had scoffed, unable to comprehend such sincerity. Irene had laughed it off, but Brett knows better now. "You're wrong. I'm not as good of a person as you think." As Irene walks further away, the greatsword swaying, Brett's anxiety mutates into desperate, ugly envy. He stares at his friend's silhouette, teeth gritted so hard his jaw aches. "Irene, even you, if you also, please." The shadow of his own insecurity rises, swallowing him whole. He doesn't want to see another genius. He doesn't want to be left behind again. Tears of frustration prick at his eyes as he screams silently. "You of all people!" Brett glares at Irene, face contorted with mixture of fear and jealousy, offering a silent, treacherous prayer against his friend's success. "Please be nothing special." The heavy boots strike the stone floor. Irene Pereira walks forward, the massive greatsword strapped to his back, casting a long shadow. He stops before the judges. The elderly schoolmaster looks down with amused curiosity. "So, what will you be showing us?" Irene stands silently. He speaks his name first. "Irene Pereira." He pauses. A vertical slash. The silence shatters instantly. Confusion ripples through the students, but it's Lance Peterson who breaks decorum. His face contorts with rage. "Hey, you crazy fucker! This is the final assessment!" Lance screams. "You think something like a vertical slash is gonna cut it?" The scarred instructor steps in. "Lance Peterson, this is your only warning. You will be ejected if you interfere again." Lance stiffens, stammers an apology. The instructor looks back at Irene, perplexed. A vertical slash has no practical use. What does he plan to show us? Irene ignores the outburst. He grips the hilt and heaves the massive blade into ready position. He doesn't strike immediately. Instead, he closes his eyes and exhales a long, slow breath. The hall falls quiet, but this time, the silence is heavy with confusion. Students whisper, wondering why he's just standing there. Among the crowd, the silver-haired girl, Ilia, widens her eyes. She silences the students near her. She sees what they cannot. The air around Irene seems to warp. It's not hesitation, it's deep meditation. Irene stabilizes his breathing. He tenses every muscle. He commands his consciousness to dive inward. Focus. Enter the mind. The noise fades, replaced by a vast, dark void. Beneath his feet, the sensation of stone is replaced by gentle ripple of water. In this mental landscape, Irene stands alone with his sword. "I still don't know who you are," he thinks. The water erupts. A colossal presence rises from the depths. A titan with wild, flowing hair and body forged from scars. It's the figure from his dreams. The spectral giant raises a phantom blade, the water churning violently. But now, in the mindscape, the giant begins his motion. It's the same motion Irene has practiced tens of thousands of times. With resolve that solidifies, the blonde swordsman drives his weapon downward. He channels every ounce of persistence into a single motion. The air warps around the blade as blue energy trails behind it. He pushes past his limits, eyes glowing with intense luminosity as he unleashes the strike. A blinding vertical slash dissects the darkness, accompanied by tremendous release of force. The impact is not merely a cut, but an eruption. The ground shatters instantly. Jagged shards of earth and raw energy burst upward, twisting into a massive, spiraling pillar of stone that reaches toward the sky. The sheer scale leaves spectators paralyzed. Students recoil in terror, while Judith and Ilia stare wide-eyed. As the dust settles around the towering monument, the silence returns. Heavy, Irene stands amidst the debris, chest heaving violently. His body trembles. Judith rushes to his side, gripping his arm tightly. She calls out his name. Nearby, Brett stands with his back turned, fists clenched so hard his knuckles turn white. The scene shifts to the solemn interior of the Academy's great hall. The students gather in dim light, awaiting the verdict. The old master stands before them, holding the results. He offers a warm smile. He reminds them that while the final assessment carries weight, it's not the sole determinant. He begins reading the rankings. Peter Nelson takes 66th place, Alice Bennett 42nd. As the numbers climb, tension mounts. Finally, he announces Judith in 4th place. Brett Lloyd is named 3rd. The blue-haired boy remains turned away, silent. Then comes the shock. 2nd place is awarded to Irene Pereira. Irene looks up, expression blank with disbelief. Finally, first place, Ilia Lindsay. The silver-haired girl stands tall, expression unreadable. With the announcements concluded, the group disperses. Ilia turns and walks away alone. The heavy wooden door groans. The silver-haired girl steps inside, her gaze sweeping until it lands on the solitary figure. She names him softly, Irene. Sitting on a low bench, Irene looks up, startled. He grips the handle of his massive greatsword, offering a quiet greeting. The girl joins him, taking a seat. A comfortable silence stretches before she leans forward. She breaks the quiet by observing that he has grown quite strong. Irene blinks, caught off guard. She continues, admitting that while her other rivals were formidable, this is the first time in a long while she felt genuine pressure of being chased. A small smile touches her lips as she confesses she barely secured first place. Though such a close call would usually vex her, this time, the thrill was actually fun. She turns to him, eyes bright, telling him that his sword was truly intimidating. Irene flushes crimson, composure crumbling. He frantically stammers, insisting that her sky sword was truly amazing. She turns away with light scoff, noting how weak he is to praise, before her expression sobers. She calls his name again, tone shifting to something heavier. She delivers the news plainly. She will not be remaining at the Chrono Swordsmanship Academy. The statement hits Irene like a physical blow. His eyes widen in shock, and he shouts a desperate demand for explanation. She leans in close, amused, asking why he's reacting so strongly. Irene recoils, face heating up as he fumbles, managing only to stammer that the news is too sudden. Leaning back, she explains with calm detachment. She never intended to become an official trainee. Her goal was always to secure first place in both assessments before returning to her family. Her gaze turns distant. She asks if he's aware of the figure known as the greatest genius on the continent. Irene admits his ignorance, shaking his head. The name drops from her lips with the weight of a legend, Carl Lindsay. The image of a man fills the space, a figure with silver hair tied back, clad in a dark cloak. His face is sharp, his eyes piercing and cold, radiating overwhelming power. She reveals the connection that binds her to this legend, stating simply that this man is her older brother. The memory resurfaces. It begins when the narrator turns 7, when her world revolves around her older brother. He stands at the center of attention, a man whose name is known across the continent. In her eyes, he's invincible. He proves his worthiness, emerging victorious in spars against seasoned knights. His talent is undeniable, securing his reputation as the continent's greatest genius. But the narrative shifts as a new figure enters. A commoner named Ignat appears, a wild prodigy who organized a mercenary band at age 14. She stands before the celebrated genius. She requests a spar, and the brother accepts without hesitation. The confrontation is explosive. The brother roars, channeling all his strength, but he's met by glowing, manic eyes. Ignat grins with terrifying confidence as their blades meet. Within merely 3 strikes, the defense is shattered. Blood sprays as the brother is struck down. The aftermath is cold. Ignat looks down with a sneer, calling him a disappointment before walking away. The brother collapses to his knees, spirit broken. She rushes to him, wailing in grief, but the light has gone from his eyes. He never resurges from this defeat. The adoration turns into cold stares, and unable to bear the pressure, he retreats into darkness. Witnessing her brother's destruction, the sister forges a steel resolve. She pledges that her life will never be controlled by opinions of others. She trains relentlessly. However, a dark realization forms. She was unknowingly running under Ignat's shadow the entire time. Back in the academy hallway, the silver-haired swordswoman reveals the truth. She entered the academy early to be recognized as a knight at 14 solely to beat Ignat's record of 15. She was living in reaction to a ghost, but now, she declares with relieved smile, she's done chasing someone else. She looks at the blonde boy with genuine gratitude. Watching him, someone who never minded what others said, has changed her. She makes a new pledge to follow her own heart. As she turns to leave, she acknowledges that he has overcome immense hardships. The blonde youth sits on the bench, staring down at his palms. He admits he still lacks a clear goal. "Don't be silly," a sharp voice cuts through. He looks up to see the silver-haired girl smiling. She tells him to work harder. She turns, ponytail swaying as she strides away. Over her shoulder, she warns that if he fails to keep pace, she will widen the gap. He watches her retreating figure, a small smile touching his lips. However, his smile fades into a heavy frown. The doubt returns. He grips the hilt of his greatsword, knuckles turning white. Alone, he hoists the heavy weapon, asking himself if he's truly okay. Elsewhere, the stone floor bears a jagged scar, a deep fissure marking overwhelming power. A blue-haired boy stands over the destruction, hands in pockets, staring with hollow expression. "Hey, young master." The blue-haired boy flinches as a red-haired girl pops up behind him, face bandaged. She points out the damaged area is off limits. The boy doesn't respond. He stares at the ground. When he finally speaks, his voice is flat. He announces that he's quitting. The girl freezes. She asks him to repeat himself. Stunned, the boy's thoughts spiral into dark comparison. He stares at the destruction, measuring the impossible distance. Someone who picked up a sword only a year ago is exerting power that eclipses years of his own training. He turns to the girl with fake smile, concluding that such feats are reserved only for the chosen ones. He walks past her, offering hollow thanks. As he tries to walk away, a hand clamps onto his shoulder. He turns, confused, just in time to see a fist flying. The impact is solid. The blue-haired boy is sent flying backward, skidding before crashing. He sits up, clutching his jaw, shouting in disbelief. The red-haired girl stands over him, trembling with rage. She screams, asking how he could fail to dodge a simple punch when he's capable of dodging her sword slashes. She mocks him. She advances, shouting. The idea of chosen ones offends her. She demands to know where that leaves her, someone who cannot even defeat a coward like him. Stunned, he watches as she grabs him by the collar. She shakes him violently, tears gathering. She yells about the other students, asking if he believes they're all wasting their time. She commands him to be proud that in his youth, he fought against someone who might become the continent's greatest swordsman. She frames his defeat not as failure, but as a legendary story. She scolds him for trying to run away. The boy sits on the floor, cheeks swelling red. He looks down, unable to meet her gaze. A few days pass. The setting shifts to the swordmaster's office. The silver-haired trainee stands before the desk. The old swordmaster asks if she's satisfied. She confirms, but clarifies that her satisfaction stems from more than just securing first place. The swordmaster notes she appears much brighter now. She credits his teachings, but the old man waves off the compliment. He dismisses her kindly. As she exits, the swordmaster instructs his assistant to summon the next trainee. The atmosphere grows heavier. The swordmaster looks at the young man with blue hair with intense seriousness. He praises the trainee's results. The young man stands in light, but his face remains in shadow. The master lists the boy's improvements. He admits he holds high expectations. However, the young man remains silent. When he finally speaks, his voice is devoid of life. He apologizes, admitting he no longer possesses any confidence. The swordmaster gazes into the boy's eyes, noting they look dead. Realizing his words aren't reaching the boy's heart, the swordmaster sighs and grants him permission to do as he likes. The boy turns and walks away with heavy steps. The mood shifts as the next student enters. The blonde trainee, Irina Pereira, stands amidst bookshelves. The swordmaster's expression softens into genuine grin. He confesses that Irene's final assessment was the most surprised he's ever been. Irene thanks him. The old man asks if Irene remembers their conversation following the midterm interview. Irene looks up, momentarily caught off guard, before nodding. The swordmaster reveals he has a proposal, causing Irene to straighten. But before the proposal is laid out, the swordmaster raises a finger, expression turning sharp. He leans in closer. He addresses Irene by full name and demands an answer to the fundamental question. He asks for the reason why Irene swings his sword. The schoolmaster leans in. What is your reason for swinging your sword? Irene freezes, searching for an answer that refuses to materialize. The red-haired instructor steps in. You don't have to think so hard. It can even be for reasons like honor or money. Irene remains silent, sweat beading. The schoolmaster breaks the silence. Irene Pereira, you didn't walk down the path of swordsmanship out of your own free will. After hesitation, Irene nods. That's right, the schoolmaster continues. You were more diligent than anyone else. However, I could not feel any emotions natural for a swordsman from you. He describes the others. Brett radiated joy. Judith's competitive drive was terrifying. Every trainee felt sadness, happiness, or rage. But you didn't show any of those feelings. Are you imitating someone? Irene flinches. Yes, that's correct. As I thought. I'm surprised you got all the way here from imitation. The schoolmaster raises a hand, pointing at Irene. If you plan to follow the way of the sword, you must think carefully. If you don't have a reason, you don't have a reason to remain here. This is not a place mainly for swinging a sword, but rather a place to find your raison d'etre. Irene interprets the advice as dismissal. He bows. Thank you very much. He turns to leave, but a chuckle stops him. What do you mean, final? Come closer. The schoolmaster grabs his hand. A drop of blood falls onto a golden plate. Light bursts. Intricate engravings surface. Chrono Swordsmanship Academy, 27th generation. Official trainee Irene Pereira. You have 1 year. Find your own way of the sword by then. Irene clutches the emblem, newfound fire igniting. Yes, I will definitely return. Time shifts. Irene stands outside the academy walls. A voice calls out. A silver-haired girl approaches. Come visit me when you have time. She presses an object into his palm. It's our family's insignia. I'll give you flowers if you come over. Flowers? A pheasant's eye. The same flower engraved on the bracelet you gave me. He nods. I rooted them all when I was 7. They bloom around April and May, so visit me next year around that time. Okay, I'll be there for sure. Judith's voice cuts through. What's that bright thing? Give me one too. She snatches the insignia. This will sell for a good amount. As she lowers her hand, the greed fades. I'm sorry for back then. What? I'm sorry for mocking you and your family. I didn't have anything like a family. The noble girl smiles. So that's it. The blonde youth chimes in, beaming. I'm really sorry. I'm also sorry for ignoring you. His cheerfulness snaps Judith's patience. She grabs him in a headlock. You're saying weird shit again. Their bickering stops when the boy halts. Ah! Ahead stands a young man with blue hair. Brett, I heard you're leaving the academy. Did something happen? Brett looks away. Who knows? It's kind of hard to explain. It's okay. Everyone has their own circumstances. Aren't you leaving too? Yeah, but I'm not leaving for good. I'll be back after training. You keep trying to improve yourself. Unlike me, who just gave up. Thank you, Brett. Brett looks up, startled. Thanks to you, I've become certain. A year ago, something changed within me. I feel alive when I swing my sword. But the reason I could move forward was because I met you all. Thank you. A voice calls from a carriage. Master Brett, I'll be going first. He climbs in. The carriage moves. The blonde youth stands rooted, watching without proper goodbye. He cannot let it end like this. Drawing deep breath, he cups his hands and screams with everything he has. Brett yells out a fierce promise to get stronger, bidding passionate farewell. The red-haired girl breaks the silence, asking if they're witnessing tragic lovers. Irene stands motionless. A cold feeling tells him he might never see Brett again. A pristine carriage arrives. When Irene introduces the girls as his friends, the household staff reacts with hysterical disbelief, shouting in shock, unable to comprehend their young master has made friends. They bow with exaggerated gratitude, making the girls feel awkward. Irene waves goodbye, urging them to visit soon. The carriage rolls away. The two girls stand alone. The red-haired girl glances sideways, sweating nervously. Desperate to escape, she clutches her stomach and invents a sudden ache. They exchange stiff farewells. Meanwhile, inside a library, an instructor speaks with a bald man. He notes the man must be sad. The instructor's expression turns serious, questioning if Irene will be all right. The bald man dismisses the concern. He describes Irene not as a prodigy of talent, but as a genius of effort. Back on the grounds, the red-haired girl walks alone. She mutters that she's alone once again. Suddenly, footsteps rapidly approach. A hand grasps her shoulder. She spins around to find Brett standing there, mischievous grin plastered across his face. Her eyes go wide, shouting to know why he's standing there. Brett strikes a flamboyant pose as evening sun casts a golden halo. I thought hard about it. As a member of the Lloyd Count family, giving up didn't sit well. Moreover, since Irene's gone, there's no one to handle your explosive temper. Judith's irritation spikes. What the hell did you say? Aren't you happy that I'm back? Judith's face erupts into crimson flush. She stammers, completely losing composure. Irene said stuttered swears are the same as an affirmation. Shut up. Do you think the swordmaster would accept someone who left? Of course. I would need to beg on my knees. But he wouldn't want to abandon someone as talented as me. You're fucking insane. The two begin to walk side by side toward the gates. I wanted to tell you this, but you shouldn't swear so much. You arrogant prick. Yeah. The carriage rattles along the forest path. Inside, the servant sits across from his young master. Aaron stares out the window. To the servant, this silence speaks volumes. He assumes the boy is heartbroken because he failed to become an official trainee. The servant leans forward. He notices an object gripped in Aaron's hand. As his eyes focus on the metallic card, his composure shatters. It's a platinum label from the Lindsay family. He demands to know where Aaron acquired it. Aaron remains calm. He explains that a friend gave it to him. Aaron clarifies that the white-haired girl is named Ilia Lindsay. The revelation hits the servant like a blow. He gapes, realizing the young master's connections are far more impressive than he imagined. Unfazed, Aaron announces he's going to take a nap. By the time the carriage arrives, night has fallen. Once inside their inn room, Aaron sits cross-legged. He enters deep meditation, faint wisps of steam rising from his body. Outside the door, the servant presses his ear against the wood. Silence greets him. Convinced that Aaron has sunk into despair, he must find a way to cheer his young master up. Later, they walk through the town's night market. The servant scans the area when something catches his eye. A large, gray-skinned figure sits behind a table, an orc. He realizes this is an orc seer. Orc seers are the most skilled among all diviners. Seeing an opportunity, the servant guides him toward the stall. The orc grins, welcoming them. Aaron steps forward. The servant strokes his mustache. Knowing orc seers only prophesy good things, the orc gestures with theatrical flair, but as his gaze settles on the blonde youth, his bravado falters. He stares intensely, asking for the boy's age with sudden seriousness. The boy answers that he's 16. Beads of sweat form on the orc. The seer's demeanor shifts to genuine awe. He declares that the youth is destined for greatness. The attendant slams his hand onto the table, shouting that the orc is a sham. Outraged, he grabs the boy. As they leave, the orc passes a small paper to the youth, urging him to read it when he faces difficulties. The boy accepts with polite thanks. Left alone, the orc watches the boy's retreating figure, heart pounding. The overwhelming aura of energy enveloping the teenager leaves the seer trembling. He marvels that a 16-year-old could possess such terrifying power. Later, in the carriage, the attendant expresses regret. The boy smiles gently. His attention turns to the note. There is no need to be alone to stand alone. The words resonate deeply. Meanwhile, the attendant vents, scoffing at the seer's predictions. The boy looks up. He reveals that he did not fail. The attendant freezes. The boy explains that he passed, though his acceptance is deferred until he completes homework given by the swordmaster. The attendant stares, stunned. The carriage lurches violently. Outside, the driver pulls hard on the reins. Through the window, another carriage, dark and imposing, is thundering toward them. The attendant pales. It's the Gairoon family's carriage. The golden crest glints menacingly. This is a confrontation with the family most hostile toward the Pereiras. The dark carriage stops. The man stepping out is Aaron Gairoon. The attendant suggests they stay inside. Irene shakes his head. Remaining hidden would be discourteous. Without hesitation, he opens the door. Outside, the attendant bows deeply. Irene steps down, standing tall. Aaron eyes Irene, his smug smile faltering. Internally, he's taken aback. The boy is taller, his frame filled out with muscle. Aaron quickly dismisses the thought. Aaron adopts friendliness. asking if Irene is returning from the academy. Irene meets his gaze and offers a simple affirmative. Aaron's smile sharpens. He asks if Irene intends to continue practicing swordsmanship. Irene looks away before answering that he probably will. Aaron tilts his head, tone dripping with false sympathy. He asks if Irene plans to learn from his family, pointing out that it would be difficult to learn anywhere else. The attendant grits his teeth, furious. Irene doesn't get angry. He simply nods, agreeing. Aaron's smug expression freezes. Irene asks if there's anything else Aaron would like to say. Aaron, caught off guard, breaks eye contact. He stammers out a weak denial. Aaron pauses, sweat beading. If you don't, then we'll get going. The blonde merely glances away. It was a long journey. I want to rest. Internally, Aaron fumes. The lack of engagement is infuriating. His temper snaps. Wait. A sly grin spreads. Let's just shake hands before we part. Why? Don't you know? Swordsmen can tell each other's strength just by shaking hands. It's the first time I'm hearing this. You still lack knowledge. It's a quote from the famous swordsman Louis Sogard. He thrusts his hand out. As your senior, let me see how much your skills have improved. The blonde stares at the offered hand. As he slowly lifts his own, the nervous knight in the background gulps. Their palms meet. Aaron's facade vanishes. He constricts his fingers with vice-like force, channeling all his malice. His grin widens, waiting for the cry of agony. But there's only silence. The blonde continues to stare, expression unchanged. Confusion bleeds into Aaron's mind. He squeezes harder, but the hand feels like iron. Aaron's face turns red, sweat pouring as he realizes the pressure radiating back is overwhelming. Oh right, I was supposed to grip tightly, right? With sharp intake of breath, he clamps his fingers down. The pressure is instantaneous and overwhelming. The air distorts, energy crackling outward. Aaron feels his bones grinding together. His eye widens to pinprick of panic. A scream tears from Aaron's throat as he violently wrenches his hand free. He stumbles back, clutching his throbbing fingers. The blonde stands there, looking mildly apologetic. Ah, sorry, it's my first time, so I couldn't control my strength. Aaron stares, sweat pouring, teeth grit. Rage and humiliation war within him. Desperate to escape, he abruptly turns his back. Then I'll be going first. Before the dust settles, a confused voice drifts. What? It's over already? The group turns. A black and white cat sits on the grass. A talking cat? Could it be? The cat tilts its head. Human speech flows out. Nia, what are you doing? Give him a good smack. Nia, the older man gasps. A conjurer? The spectacle in the town square draws a crowd. A man stands before a massive stone. With rhythmic gesture, the heavy rock lifts into the air, hovering silently. The onlookers whisper that it's like magic. Yet, their awe is misplaced. Magic is bound by rigid logic. However, when the unexplainable manifests without reason, it's not magic, but the mystic arts. In a quiet clearing, a small black cat embodies this defiance. The creature shouts with distinctly human voice, demanding the travelers hurry up. The sudden speech sends terror through the group. The blonde nobleman and his escort stare in horror. They must flee. The nobleman bows, apologizing and announcing their departure. The cat, however, is not pleased. Scrambling onto its hind legs, it taunts them. It reaches into a tiny coin purse. Defying reality, the feline pulls out a full-size sword. The cat swings the blade with practiced ease, begging for a spar. The travelers refuse. Disappointed, the cat lowers the weapon. The group hurries into their carriage. As the vehicle rolls away, the black cat sits on the road. Inside, the young master stares out the window. The nobleman promises to investigate once they return, noting the relevance since the young master's sister, Kirill, is also a mystic. The journey concludes at the family estate. The young master steps out, greeted by his father. The reunion moves to the dining hall. The father beams with pride, acknowledging reports of his son's improved swordsmanship. The conversation shifts to the strange encounter. The father reveals he's heard about the talking cat. The creature is named Ruru, a genuine cat possessing human intelligence. Ruru appeared 10 days ago, requesting to be Kirill's teacher. Kirill interjects. The cat is incredibly strong, likely more powerful than any mystic in the capital. She asks for her brother's opinion. The young master hesitates, admitting he knows little about mystics. Kirill's eyes narrow. She demands to know what he thought of Ruru personally. The intensity creates suffocating pressure. Desperate to break the tension, he announces that he has a present for her. Kirill recoils. Kirill stares at the small blue box, face heating up. Her parents beam with delight. Kirill squeezes her eyes shut. Thank you. When she opens her eyes, she sees her family staring. The embarrassment boils over. She slams her hands onto the table. I said thank you. Don't make me repeat myself. Realizing her volume, she shrinks back. Oh, sorry. Irene watches her with small smile. Just as he prepares to present gifts for his parents, a strange voice interrupts. Oh, you're Kirill's big brother? A soft paw steps onto the tablecloth. Irene flinches. A black cat sits among dinner plates. The family freezes. No wonder. You have a similar scent, but you're way too different from Kirill. Kirill doesn't take kindly. Why are you here? She lunges to snatch the cat. While I'm here, I should try persuading your brother. What are you talking about? Kirill shakes the creature. No, it's just, he looks easier to win over than you. And, Kirill loves her brother very much. So if I win over your brother, won't you naturally be won over? Kirill's face turns crimson. The cat has exposed her deep affection. Oh, was I not supposed to say that? Hey! Kirill screams, chasing the creature out. Irene and his father sit in sudden silence. I'm not sure how to handle that situation. Irene's mother salvages the dinner. Let's worry about problems later. Tell us more about the academy. Later that night, Irene sits on his bed. His parents were so happy over a simple gift, far more moved by that than by news of his conditional acceptance. He won't waste his time like before. He won't procrastinate in finding his own path. A gentle knock interrupts. Is someone outside? Yes, young master. May I come in? The maid enters, concerned. You're going to the training grounds tomorrow? Yes, I'll be going at dawn. Will you really be all right? You must still be fatigued. Irene smiles with genuine eagerness. It's all right. Rather, I'm fretting from not holding a sword for half a month. Meanwhile, in a darker office, Jack stands before a large desk. Then I will take my leave, father. Viscount Phil Gyron stops him. Jack. Aaron's expression was quite weird. Did something happen in the Pereira territory? Jack stiffens. We met young Master Irene on our way back. The Viscount scoffs. That deadbeat returning from the academy? Yes. As he was interacting with young Master Aaron, suddenly the Viscount explodes into rage. He smashes his fist into the desk. How does that make any sense? What in the hell were you doing? Jack flinches. I apologize. The Viscount paces, mood swinging violently. He screams about the report. He cannot fathom that the child, once skin and bones, has undergone such transformation. He rejects the idea that the academy could work miracles. His rage pivots to Harun Pereira. He despises everything about the man. Driven by petty jealousy, he rants that even Pereira's territory is flourishing, while the one target they thought was easy to harass is now growing a spine. Father, please calm down. Ryan Gyron stands in silhouette, unfazed. He suggests they step on the growing sprout before it becomes a tree. The Viscount's anger evaporates. He asks if Ryan has a scheme. Ryan smiles. Of course. Ryan lays out his trap. He reminds his father of the upcoming family head conference for the Hale Kingdom's 6 southern families set in Pereira territory. Ryan's eyes narrow with malice as he proposes using that public stage to drag the deadbeat noble back down. The plan delights the Viscount. He claps his hands, mood soaring. He dismisses Jack and praises Ryan as the pride of the family. Ryan accepts the praise stoically, but as his father turns away, his expression curdles into cold contempt. He mentally dismisses the Viscount as a crazy old man. Yet behind that disdain lies dangerous intellect. Ryan is not merely a pampered noble, but a predator, brighter, more competent, and significantly nastier. The shadows deepen as he prepares to enter the fray. The sun barely clears the castle walls when a squad of soldiers drags itself into the courtyard, plate armor clanking, breath misting in the cold air. They gripe about the early drill, one insisting that discipline is what keeps monsters off the streets, another dismissing the whole expedition system as a status show for noble families. The bickering dies the second they reach the training grounds. Lord Irene is already deep into chin-ups, a massive iron weight hanging from a belt at his waist. The soldiers stare. They whisper that he just got back from the academy. He greets them calmly between reps and tells them his solo training won't interfere with their drills. One soldier tries lifting a matching weight plate off the ground and can barely budge it. Knight Oren Zukran arrives, ready to bark, until he sees Irene holding a full horizontal flag, his body perfectly parallel to the ground, completely motionless. He forces a laugh and tries to play it off as nothing special, but sweat starts forming on his own forehead. When a soldier asks if Zukran can replicate the move, he screams at everyone to fall in line instead. Irene shifts to his main focus, hoisting a massive, heavy-bladed sword onto his shoulder, feet grinding into the dirt from the weight. High on a railing above, a sleek black cat named Ruru watches with glowing eyes. He figures she's there to argue with him again, then lets it go. He knows he hasn't come close to matching the Titan from his dreams. So for now, repetition is the only way forward. A week of grinding work blurs by. At sunset, Irene leads the squad on a long run. The soldiers end up flat on the ground, gasping while he barely loses his rhythm. His thoughts drift to his former classmates Brett, Judith, and Ilia, who built themselves up through pure, unassisted perseverance. Afterward, a soldier pulls him aside and warns him that Ruru is a mystic known to pull in curses and bad luck. Irene watches the cat rolling lazily on the railing and doesn't react. Once the courtyard empties, he walks up to her and asks why she's been quiet all week. She yawns, calls him boring, and then says she has a bribe. She holds out a glowing blue orb, and his retainer Marcus nearly chokes it's a cat's eye gem, valuable enough to purchase a quarter of the entire Pereira territory. Ruru sweetens the deal by offering Marcus a cut too. The ask is simple. Convince Kirill to become her student. When Irene pushes for a real reason behind her fixation on his sister, Ruru just blinks and says she likes her. No hidden agenda, no grand scheme. Irene genuinely cannot process it. Ruru then launches into a full lecture about humans being obsessed with gold. Digging through a tiny pink pouch to show her real treasures, a woven wooden ball she sniffs like a sacred relic, a dried piece of foxtail grass from her younger years, and a beat-up little teddy bear in a party hat, gifted by a stray cat friend. These, she insists, are what wealth actually looks like. Irene watches her balance the priceless gem on her head while clutching her worn-out toys, and he genuinely smiles. When she shoves the stone toward him again, he turns it down. He tells her that her own speech already got through to him. Rather than take the bribe, he'll tell Kirill exactly what he felt from Ruru's sincerity. Ruru is completely blindsided. Irene walks away thinking she'll be far easier to deal with than his sister. The next morning, Ruru sprints to him, screaming about an emergency which turns out to be her food bowl. She's too nervous to eat alone. He sits down. She happily crunches away. The day after, she hauls him to a balcony to analyze a stray kitten resting in the courtyard. When he asks for her read on it, she snaps that she obviously cannot know what other cats are thinking. They spend hours up there anyway, laughing through the afternoon. But as the sun drops, the face of a stern, bearded mentor cuts through Irene's thoughts, and with it, the full weight of a one-year deadline. to forge his own path in swordsmanship. He stands abruptly, leaving a confused Ruru behind, and marches toward the dark clouds building on the horizon. Rain hammers the courtyard. Irene stands in the middle of it, white-knuckling a heavy training blade. He needs a technique that belongs to him alone, something to fill the void left by the academy. He lifts the sword overhead and swings with everything he has. The blade crashes down and blasts a shockwave of water across the stone. But when the spray settles, the truth hits harder than the swing. The rippling puddles don't show his own growth. They reflect a technique someone else built. He is still just a shadow of another's legacy. Then a voice slices through the rain. Ruru asks him if he has ever studied the mystic arts. A pulsing sphere of violet light erupts between the courtyard walls, casting an otherworldly glow across the wet stone. Ruru stands before it small, but radiating something immense. She locks onto him and, with total conviction, demands that Irene become her student. The rain-soaked courtyard goes dead silent. Aaron stares at the small black cat in front of him as the air turns heavy and oppressive, like the atmosphere itself is pressing down on his chest. Ruru locks eyes with him, her blue gaze cutting straight through the storm, and demands that he become her disciple. Then, just as fast as it came, the crushing weight lifts. She's back on her hind legs, waving her little paws around, hyped about exploring the mystic arts together. Aaron shuts it down immediately. He's a swordsman, not a mystic, and this isn't something you just decide to pick up. Ruru waves off his objection like it's nothing, claiming that a swordsman with a strong will is actually the ideal candidate. She breaks it down for him. Martial artists turn inward, grinding their bodies to generate aura. Magicians turn outward, reading the laws of nature to manipulate mana. But a mystic is something else entirely. They impose their will on reality, transforming sincere desire into tangible power through the sheer force of the heart. She leans in, eyes glowing, and tells him that the vertical slash he threw earlier, that raw, desperate desire to cut, is exactly the kind of foundation she's looking for. Aaron still refuses. Then he drops something heavy. The sword Ruru admired doesn't actually belong to him. Her tail stops mid-twitch. He opens up about the dreams another man's life, skills, and memories layered over his own. Ruru identifies it as a known phenomenon, a kind of spiritual overlay where a foreign soul's imprint settles on top of a person's own. Aaron sinks onto the cold stone floor. He admits that the man from his dreams wields something genuinely beautiful, but he cannot build his future on someone else's technique. He needs his own sword. When Ruru asks what that looks like, he draws a blank. All he can picture are the endless, mechanical swings he threw before the dream started. The realization that he's back at zero sits on him like dead weight. Ruru hops up to the high wooden railing above him, and her tone shifts completely. No more playfulness. She looks down at him and delivers the verdict cold. Everything he has done up to this point does not count as effort. His previous training was a waste of time. The next morning, Irene is stuck in bed, Ruru's words still rattling around in his skull. Marcus knocks and enters with a calm, business-like expression. He mentions that a conference for the Southern Union expedition is coming up in a few days, and that the family head needs a decision on Irene's participation soon. Irene acknowledges it, but Marcus didn't come just to talk about schedules. He lowers his voice and lays out a pattern of disasters tied to Ruru, the Oracle Mystic Guild in the East, completely demolished after she left. A disciple from the Jackal Thief who died in a freak accident. A merchant group that collapsed financially after crossing paths with a black cat. Each case, different circumstances, same common denominator. Irene asks flat out whether there's any actual proof of her involvement. Marcus admits there isn't just her presence near every catastrophe. He bows, advises against inviting that kind of risk, and excuses himself. Irene stays seated on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. He speaks into the empty room, knowing full well someone is listening. He tells the hidden presence not to hold anything against Marcus. The man is acting out of genuine care. Then he makes his position clear. He won't be moved by other people's fear. He intends to tell Kirill exactly what he has seen from Ruru with his own eyes, and what he sees is someone strange and eccentric, but fundamentally good. Ruru materializes on the floor, her black form small and still. Her big blue eyes look fragile as she asks, quietly, whether she really does bring misfortune to the people around her. Irene asks her directly. She completely loses it, jumping, denying, explaining. The guild tower fell because two old men had a feud. The merchant group imploded because the heirs couldn't stop fighting each other. She insists it was all coincidence, every single time. Irene smiles softly and tells her it's fine. He's dealt with bad rumors himself and has never let them define how he treats people. He judges by what he can see and feel, nothing else. That simple kindness breaks something loose in Ruru. Her eyes fill up fast and she launches herself at him, sobbing. She slams a massive, shimmering black orb onto the bed, a bribe, she calls it, even better than the cat's eye, and begs him to use it to convince everyone she isn't a bad cat. She disappears before he can say a word. Irene stares at the enormous glowing pearl on his mattress. The thing is nearly the size of a human head, casting a cold blue light across the entire room. He looks at it and, completely deadpan, questions whether something this absurdly oversized could even be considered practical. The orb continues to shine, completely unbothered. A week later, Viscount Gyron's carriage rolls up to a stone estate, dust settling at the gates as he steps out and trades laughs with an old acquaintance. Standing nearby, Irene Pereira is already sweating through the formality. A loud guy in a red uniform breaks from the pleasantries, just long enough to comment on how much Irene has grown before herding the whole group inside. The banquet hall is massive and golden lit, but it feels like a cage. A long table packed with nobles, the low hum of political small talk, silverware clinking, and Irene sitting near the end, feeling completely out of his depth. His family's steward had warned him about this exact world. The Pereira name sits in cold neutrality with the Bauer and Fried families. No war, but definitely no warmth. The Lesters and Russells, though, pure animosity. And then there's Viscount Phil Gayron, whose grudge against the Pereiras runs back a full generation. The host rises at the head of the table, raises a crystal goblet, and toasts to the Southern six families. The room erupts in one unified voice. Irene is half a second behind, nervously mirroring the motion. He watches the men beside him drain their glasses with sharp, practiced ease and assumes he needs to do the same. He tips the wine back, forces it down despite the bitter taste, and sets the empty glass on the table. Dead silence. Every single person at that table is staring at him. The Lesters are smirking. The Russells and Phil Gayron look like they're filing this moment away. Irene's chest tightens as he scrambles to figure out what he did wrong, and then Baron Lester's voice slices through the tension. He points out, with the flattest possible tone, that Irene is holding his cup wrong. The table erupts in laughter. Lester leans in with a smile that doesn't reach his eyes and explains that white wine is temperature sensitive. Holding the bowl warms it and ruins the flavor. He tells Irene to grip the stem instead, then adds that he should extend his pinky. Irene complies, stiff and awkward, while Lester launches into a whole history lesson about nobles handling precious spices to justify the etiquette. Then comes the gut punch. He reminds the table that these little distinctions are exactly what separates nobles from commoners. Polite, hollow laughter fills the room. Even Baron Pereira manages a strained chuckle. Lester catches himself and does a quick backpedal, reassuring Baron Pereira that no offense was intended. The Baron keeps his face neutral, but the tension is suffocating. Lester pivots to his son Ryan, asking about a symphony he'd recommended. Ryan plays the role of cultured heir flawlessly, citing the second movement with confidence. Lester Beams then swings the spotlight directly onto Irene, asking what music he listens to. Baron Pereira's eyes go wide. Irene hesitates, the silence stretching into something painful, and then admits he doesn't really listen to music. Lester's expression shifts to theatrical pity. He references the Swordsmanship Academy, suggesting Irene simply never had the time for the arts, but his tone sharpens as he advises that having nothing to talk about is embarrassing for everyone. He waves it off as a joke, but the damage lands clean. Ryan smirks from across the table. Irene stares at his plate, hands trembling, hit by the full weight of what his years of laziness have cost him. Every gap in his education, every morning spent in bed, it all surfaces at once, and there is nothing he can do about it right now. He excuses himself, claiming illness. The moment those heavy doors close behind him, he breaks into a sprint down the hallway, lungs burning, berating himself the whole way for running again. He stops at a training yard, slides down against the stone wall, and grabs a wooden practice sword. He swings it wildly, no form, just raw, chaotic emotion. He screams internally, asking himself if any of it even matters. A voice answers. A black cat perched on the balcony railing stares down and tells him, without hesitation, that what he's doing is completely pointless. Irene freezes. The cat continues, explaining that real effort isn't about grinding through motions, it demands total commitment of body and heart. It asks Irene directly if he can honestly say his heart is in this. That question breaks him open. Irene screams that he doesn't know, and brings the sword down with a force that tears through the air, sending dust swirling across the tiles. He's still catching his breath when three figures step into the yard. Kevin and Caesar Lester flank Martin Russell, who saunters forward with a predatory grin and challenges Irene to a spar. The banter is sharp and condescending. The lazy lord can't hold a wineglass, so surely he can't hold a blade either. Then the air goes cold. Darkness bleeds up from the ground around Irene like living smoke. He raises his massive greatsword, eyes burning blue, aura flaring gold. Whatever they came here for, they are absolutely not ready for what they're about to get. The blonde youth stands in the center of the courtyard, both hands locked around a massive cloth-wrapped practice sword. Three soldiers face him, and the mood is far from friendly. The youngest of the group, Kevin, decides he's had enough of the silent attitude and grabs a steel blade from the weapon rack, testing its weight with a few sharp swings. He's convinced that his years of experience will make short work of someone with only 1 year of training. He steps into his stance, smirking, and offers the first move like it's charity. He never gets to finish his taunt. Aaron explodes forward with terrifying speed, and before Kevin's brain can even register the movement, the heavy blade connects with his sword and rips it clean out of his hands. The weapon spins into the air. Aaron's edge stops cold at Kevin's throat. The entire exchange lasts less than a second. Even the dark-haired squad leader standing in the back loses his composure for a moment. Aaron pulls back and asks who's next. Kevin scrambles across the stone tiles, red-faced and shaking, screaming that it doesn't count because no signal was given. Aaron simply tells him to come again if he wants. The leader cuts it short. He puts a hand on Kevin's shoulder, tells him to step off, and announces that he'll handle the next round himself. His tone stays steady, but his eyes have shifted. There's a new sharpness in them now. That squad leader is Martin, and his ego is still burning. He grits out a justification to the onlookers he only lost because of a dirty surprise attack, and his crew eats it up, calling Irene shameless and underhanded. Martin picks up his heavy training sword, rolls his shoulders under the orange light of the setting sun, and asks if they're starting. Irene doesn't blink. He just says yes. Martin opens with a massive overhead strike, throwing his full body weight behind it. Irene meets it dead on and doesn't move an inch. Martin pushes into a relentless offensive barrage, heavy swing after heavy swing, while the twins on the sideline scream for him to grind Irene into the dirt. Nothing works. Irene tracks every strike with cold precision, deflecting each one without giving up a single step. Martin burns out fast. His lungs are on fire. The confusion on his face curdles into dread as he wonders why Irene feels like hitting a stone wall. The moment Martin's exhaustion peaks, Irene shifts. The counter comes in one sweeping arc and catches Martin completely off guard. He's sent stumbling backward, and when he looks down at his hands, they're swollen, trembling violently, deep red, and barely functional. The vibrations from every blocked strike have worked through the steel and shredded the nerves in his palms. Irene levels his sword and asks why the attack stopped. Inside his own head, Martin is screaming for someone to intervene. Irene raises his blade for the finish. A superior officer's voice cuts through the air just in time, calling the match and sending Martin off to the infirmary. The officer turns to Irene with a genuine smile and acknowledges how far he's come. Then the man in the crimson doublet opens his mouth. With a condescending smirk, he proposes a spar specifically with real, sharpened steel. The crowd stirs. The younger boy beside him nearly chokes. Irene just nods. That quiet acceptance amuses the challenger, who notices something different about Irene's presence, a sharpness that definitely wasn't there before the academy. Internally, the man briefly entertains leaving a mark on Irene's face before writing it off as too gracious on his part. He offers the first strike, framing it as the senior swordsman's courtesy. Irene doesn't thank him. That small slight fans a flicker of irritation the man buries under a forced laugh. He recalls the old Irene trembling, mocked, barely able to grip a hilt, and decides this will be straightforward. Irene breathes slowly. His grip settles and goes perfectly still. Then he closes his eyes. The crowd erupts in confusion, some calling it outright madness. When his eyes snap back open, the old fear is completely gone. A dense, suffocating pressure rolls off his frame, the air darkening and distorting around him. The challenger's smirk disappears. Before he can raise his guard, Irene is already moving a blur of motion, boots hammering the stone in a focused, lethal charge. The challenger's body reacts before his brain does. He finds himself pressed against the cold stone wall, lungs heaving, heart slamming. He looks down the long courtyard and realizes, with a cold rush of shame, that he retreated not by decision, but by pure survival instinct. He stares at Irene standing calmly at the far end, completely unbothered. The shame curdles fast into rage, and he pushes off the wall with a guttural cry, refusing to let the exchange stand. He never finds his footing again. A blinding flash of steel catches him right in the eyes, mid-charge, and then something like a falling wall slams into his defense. The impact travels through every bone in his body. His grip barely survives. He stumbles backward again, this time with absolutely nothing left to say. The training hall goes dead silent. Ryan stares at the jagged shard of steel left in his grip, the tip of his sword lying on the stone floor. Across the hall, Irene stands perfectly still, his own blade steady, energy still settling in the air around him. The timing couldn't be worse. The heavy doors swing open, and Viscount Gunt walks in alongside Baron Pereira and their retainers, expecting a pleasant afternoon visit. The Viscount's easy smile dies the moment he sees the broken sword in his son's hand. Ryan's throat tightens. He forces the words out he lost to Irene. The room goes rigid. Nobody can reconcile the idea of the old deadbeat Irene putting down a seasoned trainee like Ryan. Ryan's panic sharpens into something calculated. He plasters on a grin and starts spinning the story, throwing in dramatic gestures and inflated details. He claims Irene's strike was so powerful it crossed 5 meters and shattered his sword through sheer force alone. The adults eat it up. They laugh, they clap, they credit the prestigious Chrono Swordsmanship Academy for the transformation. Viscount Gunt laughs along too, though his eyes stay sharp. Baron Pereira accepts the compliment with a humble smile, equal parts proud and unsettled by how much his son has changed. When night falls and the guests head for their carriages, Viscount Gunt pulls Ryan aside and tells him quietly that he understands that Ryan must have thrown the match on purpose to smooth over the political relationship between their families. Ryan bows his head and plays the dutiful son, but the moment his father's back is turned, his face twists into something ugly. His teeth grind so hard his jaw aches. Before they've even reached the gate, he leans toward Sir Stuart and orders 5 trainees to be ready for him the moment they get home. He needs somewhere to put this humiliation. Back inside the estate, Irene faces his father in the quiet of the library. The Baron suggests he sit out the upcoming subjugation mission and focus on his academy preparation instead. Irene listens in full silence, then looks his father directly in the eye with a fire that wasn't there before. He says he's participating, no matter what. He gives himself 3 weeks to prove his worth and satisfy his father's concerns, and if he can't, he'll stand down without argument. The Baron is left speechless. He watches his son turn and walk down the long, dim hallway alone. Up on the balcony above, Kirill and her mother stand in the shadows watching him go. Kirill's face is pale, quietly wondering if her brother is really going to be okay. Her mother answers with quiet certainty they have to trust in what he's working toward. Irene makes that trust worth something. In the training hall, he pushes himself to the edge every single session. His practice sword cuts through the air in sharp, whistling arcs, sweat spraying off him with every rotation. He's done being a weight on the people around him. He remembers watching his family suppress their anger and swallow their sadness for his sake, and he decides that image dies here. After one final explosive strike, he's standing there steaming, chest heaving, and he looks up at the railing where Ruru sits under the full moon. He asks if this still looks like wasted effort. Ruru admits it doesn't. This is real effort. Irene's voice cracks slightly as he asks if he's finally ready to learn mystic arts. Ruru nods but tells him to rest first and get his head right. Irene doesn't argue. He's already aware that Kirill quietly coordinated with their father to keep the training hall off limits to everyone else. That small act means more than he lets on. When they reconvene, Ruru shows up in full professor mode, tiny round spectacles, a red bow tie, a thick book tucked under one paw, and a slender wand in the other. She lectures on mindset before technique, explaining that mystic arts live entirely in the heart. The power behind them is belief ancient peoples drew real strength from stones, the sun, and their own reverence for the world around them. She warns him away from self-sacrifice, calling it a fast road to demonic influence rather than true mastery. Then she leaps directly at his chest, grabs his collar with both paws, and looks him dead in the eyes. She tells him the path built for him specifically is swordsmanship, driven by the absolute force of his own wish. She demands he pick up his weapon and get moving. A commanding voice tears through the air, sharp and uncompromising. It lands like a blade cutting silk direct, cold, leaving no exit. Somewhere in the thick tension of the training ground, a shadow stretches long across the stone. The figure it belongs to stands waiting, unbothered by exhaustion or hesitation. The challenge is already on the floor. All that's left is to answer it. Irene swings the massive training sword over and over, wooden blade slicing through the air with a sharp whistle, arms burning, breath ragged. Ruru adjusts his tiny spectacles and watches with a critical eye before laying out the new terms. This isn't just training anymore, it's a contract. 1,000 sincere swings every single day. He waves his little wand, trailing ribbons of light, and explains that repeating a physical motion alone means nothing. But when that motion is tied directly to a deep wish, the power of the heart begins to solidify into something real. Irene stares at the sword in his grip, sweat dripping from his chin, turning the word sincerity over in his mind. He wonders whether to pour his love for his family into each arc, or the bitter memory of every failure, or a desperate hunger for a skill no one can dismiss. From the shadows, Ruru watches and smiles. As long as the boy is wrestling with those questions, an awakening is only a matter of time. The days bleed into each other. On day 2, the sun hammers the courtyard as the sword rises and falls. On day 4, the moon hangs overhead while steam rises off Irene's overheated body. On day 10, the blade slips from his numb fingers and crashes against the stone. He doubles over, hands on his knees, and the dark thoughts move in fast. Maybe this is pointless. Maybe he's just wasting what little time he has left. Ruru cuts through the spiral immediately. He tells Irene that doubt is what cools a blazing heart and grinds resolve down to sand. When the body gives out, the mind chases negativity. That's just how it works. But then Ruru leaps forward and plants both paws firmly against Irene's chest. When you can't believe in yourself, he says, believe in the people who believe in you. Pay that borrowed faith back with your own effort. The path is a lot less impossible when you're not carrying it alone. Irene looks away, voice heavy. He admits that after years of failure and running from his responsibilities, he doesn't believe anyone could genuinely have faith in him. Ruru completely loses it, flailing paws, rising voice, refusing to let that stand. He brings up the old comparison. When he once called Irene a pebble among hundreds in a valley, he takes it back. What he sees now is a sturdy, polished, beautiful stone, the kind people would find hard to dislike. He even jabs a stick at a drawing of Kirill, describing her as a jagged sapphire for comic effect, before getting serious again. A lot of people actually believe in Irene, more than he knows. Ruru tells him to stop jumping to conclusions and sends him off to sit with that thought in his room. Irene collapses onto his bed and stares at the ceiling. The idea of people believing in him turns slowly in his mind. He thinks about his parents and Kirill, a decade of waiting, of swallowing their worry, of holding space for him to find his way. Without them, he never picks up a sword again. He thinks about his friends, his instructors, the academy master, and even Ruru. All of them saw something in him when he was at absolute zero. Something hardens deep in his chest. He wants to become the kind of man who earns that faith, who can inspire it in others. The moment that resolve locks in, something shifts. A dark, viscous energy begins seeping from his body, coiling around him like a silent storm. The air thickens. Irene's eyes close, and a shimmering dark orb envelops him completely, suspending him in a state of deep meditation. Across the manor, Kirill drops her book. She feels the surge before she understands it, and sprints to his room, throwing the doors open. Ruru stands guard beside the bed where her brother floats inside a pulsing, translucent sphere. The cat explains calmly, Irene has entered a unique awakening, traveling deep into his own heart to fulfill his deepest wish. No outside force can reach him there. He will train until he achieves his goal, and there is no telling how long that takes. It could be days, it could be years. Kirill's face goes pale as the worst possibilities crash over her, terrified that her brother has been trapped again. Inside the orb, Irene opens his eyes. He's standing before a familiar stone wall under a bright open sky. He recognizes it instantly, the recurring dream, the lone swordsman's clearing. Across the open ground, the muscular figure moves with relentless, unchanging precision, the massive black blade rising and falling in the same eternal rhythm. But this time, Irene isn't a spectator watching from a distance. He's here, present, grounded. Then the figure turns, and the light catches his face. A rugged beard, sharp, weathered features, carved by a life lived at the edge of survival. Long, light hair falling over broad, heavily muscled shoulders, and eyes cold, piercing blue that cut straight through the distance with absolute calm authority. A golden radiance pulses from his frame, and the entire atmosphere shifts under the weight of his presence. Irene's breath catches. His eyes go wide with recognition. Irene locks eyes with the silver-haired giant across the clearing and immediately feels a pressure so dense it presses against his skin like something physical. The man doesn't even move. Then his body erupts. Not a glow, an explosion. A violent, blinding burst of energy that tears through the clearing and sends Irene flying backward into a white void. He hits the earth hard. When the world snaps back into focus, he's not in his bedroom. He's in a desolate yard bordered by a low stone wall, wearing a coarse training tunic, with a small wooden shack nearby and no silver-haired man in sight. Then something pulls his attention to the center of the clearing. Embedded deep in the dry soil, standing tall and silent, is a massive charcoal greatsword. From somewhere at the edge of the yard, a pair of glowing blue eyes watches him without blinking. Irene walks up to it. His hand trembles for just a second before he locks his grip and heaves. The blade slides free from the earth, heavy steel catching the sunlight, and the truth settles over him like clarity after a long fog. This isn't a random vision. This is a sanctuary. A realm built entirely from his own deepest wish, where no one can interrupt him, mock him, or measure his progress. He plants his feet, exhales, and brings the sword down in a powerful arc. He loses himself completely. Swing after swing, hour after hour, he pours everything into the steel. By the time exhaustion catches up to him, the sun is gone and the moon owns the sky. He starts walking toward the shack to rest, then stops. His shadow shifts beneath his feet. The world shudders. And in the span of a blink, the night dissolves, and the high noon sun blazes overhead again. Irene stares up at the blue sky with his mouth open. In this place, the sun rises because he wants to keep working. Once the shock settles, he starts testing the limits. He wills the season to change, and spring arrives, instantly yellow flowers pushing up through rocky soil. He calls for a breeze, and pink petals swirl through the air. Back in the cabin, his training clothes dissolve into something comfortable on a thought, and a full banquet materializes on the table the moment he sits down. He collapses into a plush bed afterward and stares at the ceiling, genuinely amazed. This place is perfect. Everything he needs to dedicate himself completely to the sword is right here. By day 5, the novelty is already wearing thin under the weight of the real work. He's back in the dirt, sweating through his tunic, the massive blade feeling heavier than ever. His mind drifts to the scarred man he saw before entering this realm, and what the connection between them means, but he shakes it off and refocuses. He commits to the grind, pushing through 2,000 repetitions, then 3,000. The numbers become a rhythm, a mantra against the growing fatigue. Day 211. He's leaner now, more haggard, leaning on the hilt just to breathe. He pushes past 5,000 swings, then forces himself to 6,000 as his shadow stretches long across the parched earth. Doubt flickers, and he crushes it. His body barely cooperates, but he refuses to stop. Then day 353 arrives and breaks him. He collapses face first into the dirt, trembling, the blade falling from his hands. He's worked without a single day of rest for an entire year. He stumbles back to the cabin and leaves the sword lying in the dust behind him. The collapse deepens. By day 417, his right hand goes numb after only a few thousand swings. He tells himself he'll rest today and push harder tomorrow. That promise never gets kept. The days pile up. The sword sits outside the cabin, half buried and rusting in the elements. Inside, Irene lies motionless on the bed, staring at nothing. The tally on the wall keeps climbing. By day 624, it has been 96 consecutive days since he last touched his sword. The sanctuary built from his deepest wish has become a place where his will goes to erode. The man who entered this realm vowing to forge something entirely his own is now just a body on a mattress, watching the ceiling and letting the days burn away. The sword rusts outside. The flowers from that first hopeful spring are long gone, and the silence inside that dim cabin is a different kind of weight than the great sword ever was, heavier, and a lot harder to lift. Irene is flat on his back, staring at nothing, eyes wide but hollow. The apathy pressing down on him isn't new, it's followed him for more than half his life. He thinks back to his sword form, that stiff, borrowed posture that never really belonged to him. It was all mimicry, an imitation of a massive golden warrior who burned at the edge of his vision, driving him forward with a will that wasn't his own. He came here hoping to build something real, to carve out strength that was actually his. But the moment that mysterious figure vanished from his mind, his entire foundation collapsed. Outside the wooden house, his massive practice sword sits in the dirt, half hidden by tree shadows. A year of training now feels like nothing. He pulls a thin blanket over himself and closes his eyes midday, deciding he'd rather rot in comfort where no one can watch him fall apart. Then a voice cuts through the fog. It starts muffled, distant, then sharpens into something impossible to ignore. Irene's eyes snap open. Standing in the doorway, framed by pale blue morning light, is Ilia Lindsay, silver hair pulled back, expression mildly annoyed, telling him, "Dawn training starts now." Irene completely loses it, in a panic to get out of bed. His legs tangle in the blanket, and he eats the floor face first. He groans into the wood, face burning red, while Ilia gives a soft, mocking laugh and points out that he's still in his sleepwear. Moments later, they're running through the woods. Irene sprints behind her, lungs already on fire, noticing a clear trail winding through the trees, a path that definitely wasn't there before, or maybe one he'd been too checked out to see. Ilia stays ahead of him effortlessly, glancing back to tell him he's slowing down. He gasps out an acknowledgement and forces his body forward until he finally reaches a stone archway, leaning against it just to stay upright. Back inside for breakfast, Ilia is already seated and eating, not even looking up. She tells him to sit, eat fast, and be ready for sword training the second they're done. Irene hesitates, then quietly asks how she's even there. She doesn't answer, just shoots him a sharp look, tells him to stop wasting time with useless questions, and keeps chewing. On the training grounds, Irene struggles with his massive practice sword while Ilia stands behind him, arms crossed, tearing apart every movement. She says his posture is a wreck and his heart is completely empty. Then she drops a name, Ruru, reminding him of an old lesson. He has to fill his heart to move properly. Irene freezes. He asks how she could possibly know that name. That's when things get terrifying. Ilia's presence explodes into a massive dark shadow, her eyes blazing white, screaming at him to stop asking questions and give her 2,000 more repetitions. Irene grinds through every single one. The moon is high by the time he finishes the last swing, his entire body drenched and gasping. The monstrous version of Ilia dissolves, replaced by her usual calm smile. She tells him he did good work, then shimmers and fades into the night. He stands alone in the silence, watching the last light motes disappear. She was never real. He collapses back into bed, exhausted but wired, wondering whether this mystic world pulled her image out of his subconscious. Despite how brutal it was, he decides it wasn't entirely bad. But there's no rest. Judith grabs his shirt and yanks him upright, red hair wild, screaming at him for sleeping while the sun is already up. Outside, Brat and the real Ilia are waiting. Brat clocks the oversleeping like a new bad habit, while Judith immediately tries to pick a fight with him. As the two descend into their usual bickering, Ilia quietly steers Irene away so they can actually train. Under the real Ilia's watch, Irene's movements are sluggish and sloppy, his posture breaking down from weeks of inactivity. When she notices his frustration, she smiles warm and genuine, telling him he's swaying a little but definitely improving. He feels a sharp sting of shame instead of relief. He watches Judith and Brat bicker nearby, hating how weak he feels, how much he leans on everyone around him just to keep moving. During their group run through the woods, Irene falls behind, and Brat glances back to sharply tell him to focus. Later, at a table overflowing with food, Judith stands in a chef's hat beaming with pride, insisting the feast is exceptional because she made it. Ilia is laughing with her whole body, while Brat watches Irene eat with concerned exasperation, warning him to slow down or he'll end up with a stomachache. Irene sits in the middle of all of it, wide-eyed, clutching a glazed ham, taking big rhythmic bites while his mind drifts somewhere quiet. He looks around at these loud, vibrant people and asks himself something he can't shake. Why would anyone this alive choose to believe so hard in someone as lazy as him? Their trust settles over him like something both heavy and warm. He keeps chewing, cheeks puffed out, gaze softening, the question echoing without an answer. Irene's boots slam into the dirt with everything he has left. His lungs are scorched, his legs feel like concrete, and his vision is starting to swim, but there's something strange burning underneath all of it. Even at his absolute limit, he can feel one more gear waiting. He rips a roar out of his chest and surges forward, refusing to let his body quit on him. Judith is right on his heels, absolutely refusing to get left behind, her competitive fire matching his step for step. The running gives way to sparring, and suddenly it's steel on steel, Irene's massive black blade trading blows with Brat's quick, needle-precise rapier. Brat moves like a fencer, fluid and sharp, while Irene holds his ground and weathers every rapid thrust. When he finally unloads a wide, sweeping arc, the sheer weight and pressure of the swing forces Brat back. Judith is screaming from the sidelines for Irene to press the advantage while Ilia watches with quiet, calculating eyes, tracking every shift in Brat's footwork. When the session ends, both boys are gasping and dripping with sweat. Brat respects what he sees and doesn't hide it. Irene smiles back, tired but genuine, and quietly credits the people around him. He looks up at a sky burning orange and violet, and thinks about Ruru. The lesson she left him finally lands fully. Isolating himself out of fear was never strength. It was just an old habit dressed up as discipline. He raises his sword against the twilight, a mentor's voice echoing through him, and the truth settles in his chest. The greatest obstacles don't fall to people who suffer alone. His companions shimmer and begin to dissolve, like embers drifting off a fire. Judith smiles, asking if it's finally over. Irene confirms it, 10,000 reps carved into his body and his mind. He watches them fade and understands something new. Needing people doesn't make you weak, but there is a specific kind of power that only comes from choosing to stand alone in the pursuit of perfection. The silence they leave behind is heavy, but not empty. He turns to the massive blade, buried in dry earth, grips the hilt, pulls it free, and tells no one in particular that they're starting again. Time collapses into motion. Day 1237, he's a blur through the trees, pushing past every physical ceiling. Day 1292, his swings are generating enough force to scatter leaves in miniature storms across the courtyard. Under the silver glow of night, 1375, his blade cuts cold streaks of light through the dark like a second moon. The seasons don't care. He swings through the baking heat of day 1492, through the torrential rain of day 1566, where water crashes against him, but the sword never wavers. By day 1613, steam is rising off his body between swings, and the blade itself is beginning to glow not from heat, but from the sheer concentrated will pouring through it. Autumn on day 1687 paints the trees gold and red, and leaves spin in the wake of his strikes without ever reaching the ground. Then winter hits. Day 1755 buries everything in white. Birds cut formation across the gray sky and flee the cold, but Irene doesn't move. He stands bare-armed in a snow-choked clearing and lifts the great sword overhead like the cold is simply not a factor. When spring finally returns, a single yellow flower pushes through the cracked dirt. Irene stands before the sunrise, and the earth seems to know he's different. His weight shifts, and a faint golden aura flickers along his limbs, not flashy, but undeniable. The fire inside him has been compressed and tempered into something that vibrates at a completely different frequency. His eyes are clear, still, and predatory. The blade is anchored in the ground. He breathes steady, palms open, feeling the echo of his time at the sword's place in the weight of his own hands. He's grown past what he was, but there's still something only they can give him. He decides it's time to call them back. 3 figures appear. Judith immediately breaks the silence with a laugh, poking at how much taller he's gotten, like he summoned them just to show off. Irene doesn't engage. He turns and starts walking, gesturing for them to follow, and the tone he carries makes it clear this is not a reunion, it's a test. Judith is already drawing her blade before he even finishes turning. She puts herself forward as the first challenger, but Irene stops and tells her flatly she won't be enough. He wants all 3 of them. At the same time, the silence that follows is genuine shock. He pulls the massive sword free in one motion, pivots, and unleashes a single horizontal sweep. The resulting pressure wave isn't just wind, it's a shockwave. Dirt erupts, dust clouds the horizon, and the concussive force alone reshapes the landscape. Through the haze, his voice carries one challenge: come at him together. His blue eyes burn through the settling dust, steady and completely unafraid. Eren stands across the training grounds with a calm smile and a stillness that his companions immediately notice is different. Raruna calls him cheeky, and Brat reminds her she has no ground to stand on with that complaint. The three of them grip their weapons tighter. Eren looks at all of them and quietly acknowledges to himself that taking on 3 opponents at once is a massive task, but something deeper tells him he won't lose. He closes his eyes, breathes, and sharpens every sense until the world goes quiet. Then they snap open, cold, and locked in. His heel explodes off the ground, and he's already moving before any of them can react greatsword, cutting a terrifying path through the air like he's trying to split the sky itself. His first strike is a vertical hammer blow so powerful that the pressure wave forces Raruna to brace with everything she has, her feet sliding as stone cracks beneath the impact. Brat catches the peripheral shockwave and loses his footing. Eren doesn't pause. He sweeps into a wide arc that sends Ilia leaping backward, her silver hair whipping in the gale left behind by the passing steel. All 3 of them realize fast, this isn't the same guy. Eren's blue eyes track every movement with a predatory calm. He parries Ilia's lightning thrust without flinching, sparks flying off the contact. Raruna charges back in, convinced she's read his pattern and can counter his heavy rhythm. That confidence disappears. The second his sword meets hers, the vibration travels all the way up her arms and nearly tears the weapon from her grip. Brat spots an opening and rushes from the flank, trying to find a single crack in Eren's defense. There isn't one. Eren stops a crushing overhead blow cold, muscles straining, then immediately explodes forward in a burst of speed that leaves red and blue light trails hanging in the air. Ilia scrambles into defense mode, eyes wide, completely unable to believe what she's looking at. He pivots, runs a sharp circular parry she recognizes instantly as Brat's signature technique, then immediately follows it with a brutal overhead strike that is unmistakably Judith's wild, ferocious style. The impact detonates a cloud of dust and earth, sending Ilia skidding back across the dirt. When the dust settles, Judith is hunched over gasping, staring at him in complete disbelief, demanding to know how he just used her swordsmanship with that kind of precision. Ilia steps in from the side and asks if that defensive move was really Brat's. Eren just nods. Brat stares at him in total silence. Eren scratches the back of his neck, looking almost sheepish about all of it. He explains simply the only thing he truly knows is how to put his entire soul into something. Memories flash through his mind, hauling iron weights under a brutal sun, absorbing blow after blow from Judith in sparring sessions, sitting in quiet, disciplined meditation alongside his peers. He admits none of it was enough on its own, that he hasn't mastered any of it, and that his previous training still fell short of where he needs to be. Then he drives his fist into his palm and looks each of them in the eye. He wants to learn their techniques not to replace his own path, but to forge a stronger will and find a sword that's truly his. He asks them to teach him everything they know. Judith absolutely loses it. She points at him, shaking, calling him a shameless thief and screaming that people who already have everything are always the greediest. Eren waits out the storm, then calmly suggests she should just awaken her own mystic arts. That does it. She screams, grabs her sword, and hurls it directly at his head. He ducks just in time, the blade whistling through the air where his skull had been, and shouts in genuine disbelief. She's already sprinting after him, bellowing about all the effort she's put in to get this far. He keeps running, yelling that she'll definitely hit him if he stops. She screams back that yes, obviously she will, and neither of them slows down. The sword spins through the afternoon light like a falling star. The chase bleeds back into real combat blades clashing with a spray of sparks, heavy iron meeting nimble steel, dust and motion blurring together until one final strike drives a sword deep into the ground, and silence falls. The sky has gone dark purple. Ilia and Brat are on their knees, barely breathing. Judith is flat on her back in the dirt, staring at the heavens, muttering that she never should have taught him anything, before finally screaming her defeat into the air. Eren stands over her, silhouetted against the fading light, and smiles genuinely, not triumphantly. Judith warns him, with what little fight she has left, that things will be different when they meet out in the real world. He promises her they will meet again. As she fades out, he raises his hand and watches a soft, ethereal glow drift across his palm. The scale of what he's built settles over him all at once. Back in his room, Eren lies in bed smiling at the ceiling. He feels ready fully, finally ready to leave this place behind. He closes his eyes and whispers a wish for morning to come quickly. Outside, the night air immediately begins to churn. A violent vortex spirals around the stone hut, and from the center of that swirling darkness, a massive ancient gate begins to materialize, ornate carvings shimmering cold under the moonlight.